Big Brother, mainstream media, government cover-ups. You want answers? Well, so does he. He's Alex Jones on the GCN Radio Network. And now, live from Austin, Texas, Alex Jones.
You know, the Saudi Arabian king is complaining that people are criticizing their government, their dictatorship, that chops people's heads off for free speech on the internet, and he wants it stopped, he wants it censored. And I thought, oh, you know, tough luck. You've got your little backwards third world hellhole nation that's trying to make the biggest building in the world with one of the biggest disparities of wealth between the elite and the general population, and all these kidnapped European and American and other women. We won't hear a word out of the controlled left because they're bought and paid for, so are the Republican leadership. And I thought, you know, you're going to be defeated. And I thought, not really. Saudi Arabia controls the takeover of Islam with radical Sunni Wahhabist garbage, and they are conquering Europe, and they're conquering America. And I really started thinking, man, the Saudis, you got to hand it to them. Fortune favors the bold. And it certainly is true, because I'm not even that smart, but I'm aggressive. I've got my facts together. Okay, I'm smart. But what I'm saying is I'm not the smartest guy around. But I've got basic good instincts and a historical lens. And I'm aggressive, and so I've been very effective fighting the globalists. And we've had a lot of big successes, thanks to you, the listeners and viewers and fellow patriots out there on the front lines. And I was just thinking about what would happen if other men decided it was manly to be politically involved and informed and aggressive and not chumps repeating what mainstream media says every day. We would be in a much freer country, a much freer world. And the jokes that are the Saudi Arabian leadership wearing their women's nightgowns and their little loincloths, their little beards, want to throw up, creeping around, everyone bowing down to them, and funding all these terrorists everywhere. They wouldn't be crapping all over us incessantly if we weren't such gibbering, knock-kneed cowards. To think about how we were manipulated in destroying Saudi Arabia's archenemy, Iraq, and blaming them for what Saudi Arabia was heavily involved in. It's so sick. And that's the MO of the New World Order. Bring in the radical jihadis, have them attack train stations, facilities, newspapers, theaters, kill hundreds and hundreds, kill a bunch of police, and then have the government stand up that brought them in and protected them, that arrest people that criticize them, and say, we're going to pass global government carbon taxes to prove to the radicals we're not scared. We're going to get all the power now because we did this to you. Aren't we great? It is the suspension of reality. And if people weren't in trances, this wouldn't be happening. You've got to be in a trance to sit here and to put up what's going on. And it just hit me so hard that the answer to defeating these people is being aggressive, is being forceful, is being decisive, and is just absolutely getting in their face and saying, you are degenerate, filthy criminal scourges. You are a absolute pall upon the world. You are a disease. The globalists, the collectivists, the George Soroses, the Bill Clintons, the Hillary Clintons, the David Rockefellers, the Henry Kissingers, the Prince Philips, the Prince Charleses are a bunch of over-the-top, disgusting, pathetic maggots. And we're supposed to just sit here and bow to them because they wear monkey suits, little royal outfits. All I want to say is go to hell where you came from. I hate your stinking, filthy guts enemy. What do we call the New World Order? We call them enemy. Enemy! You are the enemy. That's it. You're the enemy. You're the enemy of life. You're the enemy of honor. You're the enemy of prosperity. You're the enemy of everything good. And then you perch on top of us, the virtuous, the strong, the mighty, and convince us that you're our God. You aren't our gods. You're piles of horse manure. Gerald Celente, Trends Research Center, will be joining us in the second hour today and taking your phone calls. You got it. James Delingpole, writer of the London Telegraph, will be breaking down the World Government Summit, the biggest gathering of world leaders in history. Pushing total control of every facet of energy, massive taxes on every facet of human life, selectively enforced by them. A dictatorship over human activity. Then David Knight will host the 4th hour of Overdrive today. I'm your host, Alex Jones. Well, this happens all the time, but today is really special. The news is completely over the top, and we're going to be going over pretty much all of it here today. We do have some very interesting big guests coming up in the next few days. I'm just going to leave it at that. You'll want to tune in tomorrow. One of the biggest guests we've ever had on will be on tomorrow. I like to have surprises, so just tune in tomorrow, folks. And we have some other big guests later in the week as well. But it is Tuesday, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining us. Already now, hard to believe, the first day of December 2015. So we've only got basically 30 and a half days left in 2015. It is extremely long in the tooth, and this year has a long white beard. Soon it will be a skeletal form and will fall to its knees, imploding into dust forever as the next orbit around the sun begins. Pretty magical place we live, isn't it? But we're taught to think the magic is Hollywood stars or Barack Obama on a red carpet, that's the secrets of the universe, that's the unattainium. Oh, if you could just be in the White House at dinner with Obama or just be in Hollywood and have dinner with Brad Pitt, it'd be so wonderful. It'd be like a fantasy land, a forbidden planet, a Valhalla Elysium. And the truth is, this is Elysium. We're on the planet. We have the technologies. We have the capability to go to the next level. And the globalists are trying to suppress that and stop that and steal the brain trust that is free humanity. The ultimate heist is taking place against our DNA, against our IQs, against our very seed, the power of procreation. The final war is now beginning between the technocrats, the servants of the eugenics agenda, and what's left of free humanity. The enemy's operation is so huge, so vicious, so evil, so stealthy, but also so overt that it boggles the mind as we are inserted into the beginnings of a false reality designed to make the act of resistance or free thought laughable, impossible. To quote Bertrand Russell, the population will soon be so conditioned, so drugged, so brainwashed that a rebellion by the proletariat would be as unthinkable as sheep rebelling against the practice of eating mutton. Mutton is sheep. A rebellion by the grassroots would be as unthinkable as sheep rebelling against being slaughtered. Sheep can't rebel. They're sheep. They submit. They fall. Will you fall? They think you will fall as they perch on our chest, smothering us, strangling us in the night. Or will we become aware of the attack and surge with the power that God gave us to resist? The enemy has sought to strangle us in our crib before we fully developed, knowing we will tower above these disease twisted souls. They believe that their day of doom is here for humanity. But I tell the New World Order and the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds and the Saxe-Coburg-Gothas and the Sods and all the rest of them, your day of doom is coming, and you know it. And your devil cult will fall forever Your next fall is forever. You won't rise from the ashes this time. Let me go over some of the stacks we have here. We have the criminal activities going on in France with the total takeover of the world's energy system. We have Chuck Norris striking back against GMO corn and salmon just to counter what real environmental crises are. We have a whole new raft of people threatening to kill police and colleges shut down and hysteria. All Soros White House run as usual. Universities dominated by left-wing hate mobs, says Professor. It's now just become total tyranny, just screaming, we rule everything. Just the more socialists you grovel to them, the more they attack. It's just, they want total submission. Meanwhile, the public is more concerned with the new Leonardo DiCaprio movie by the maker of Birdman, which is a good film. Everyone's focusing on the bear raping Leonardo DiCaprio. It actually rapes him in a sex scene. I kind of looked into that. Bears aren't known to have ever raped anybody. Dolphins will try to rape you. They try to rape women. Male dolphins do. But there's no known cases of bears trying to rape people. But you see, this is how we're all distracted. The movie will probably make $1 billion because everyone, it's the big Fox thinks it's its top release ever. Because of bears raping someone. See, all this fantastical real stuff's going on. They're raping your genetics with GMO designed to change your DNA and mutate you in a bad way on record. They're raping your mind with hydrofluorosilicic acid fluoride on record, brain damaging you massively. They're raping you financially. They're raping your privacy. They're raping your Second Amendment. They're raping the borders. They're raping our taxpayers. They're raping our good name around the world, launching al-Qaeda operations with our funding. They're raping the entire planet's future with potential World War III nuclear exchanges on the horizon. They're raping the family. They're breaking everything up. But one man dies, it's a tragedy. 10,000 die, it's a statistic. One imaginary bear rapes a man. The whole planet being raped doesn't matter. Because don't worry, the people doing the main raping, flying around in their jets and with huge carbon footprints and eating the finest caviar, $1,000 a plate dinners is in the news, what they're having in Paris, taxpayer paid for, while they lecture us on less consumption as they distract from all the thousands of real environmental collapses and species die-offs and genetic mass mutation plagues and new microorganisms operating in the oceans causing huge die-offs. None of that mega epic collapse matters because Al Gore's having a little bit of $500 a spoon caviar that you're paying for right now because he's going to save you because he loves you and the earth. He's a savior. Look at him. Man, bear, pig. He has come as your savior. Do as he says and pay into his carbon trading company in London billions a day if the plan goes through, and he will deliver you with your carbon indulgence out of purgatory and into the new age heaven of world government and Sunni ghettos and open sewage and women sexually mutilated with hoods on their heads. Meanwhile, the Saudi king's complaining about the internet, talking bad about Saudi Arabia yesterday, and today he's complaining about people not being nice to the migrants when Saudi Arabia hasn't taken one of its financed Sunni invaders. And I have the articles when we come back from break. They admit that on average, out of thousands of migrants, there's not one Christian or one Shiite. It is a directed Sunni Wahhabist invasion to set up political bullying bases in every country to overthrow Christendom and the First Amendment and to establish Sharia de facto law. I can't believe that a lot of these right-wing people that I heard this saying this 7, 8 years ago were right. It's all true. And it's actually happening, directed by the Pentagon and the Central Intelligence Agency. I mean, you talk about gutting our nations. And then when their little sweetie cakes blow stuff up, they're going to set up armored vehicles and checkpoints and secret interrogation centers, and they're going to drag Tea Party people off the street and nationalists off the street in Germany and France, and they're going to put you in prison. They're already doing it with a straight face. You don't criticize the invasion. You don't criticize your women being raped. You don't criticize your freedoms being destroyed, because the loving socialist government and the paramilitary police will follow their orders to drag you off into the night, because they love you and your family so much. They will help slit the throat of their own children politically and spiritually. The great betrayal of the West, the great collapse of the West, and the response, the scorched destruction of the Middle East, is coming in the next phase as the Illuminati plays Christendom off against Islam, and on its ashes builds a one-world Luciferian government directly from the visions of the head of the Illuminati, Albert Pike. The liberty movement has never been more popular worldwide. People are ready to hear the truth. They're ready for a new renaissance. They're ready to be turned loose, to be free. And that's why the agents of chaos are trying to destabilize the entire planet. Huge developments with Russia and the Syria situation with Turkey. I mean, that is just over the top, out of control. Moment of truth as Puerto Rico faces critical debt payment collapse. That's Reuters. There is just so much to get to today. Senator Sessions says the omnibus bill in Congress gives Obama blank check on immigration in Syria to bring in millions. And you know, it's Senator Sessions that continues to blow these criminal operations wide open. A court ruled, 6+ months ago, that Obama can't open the borders and just bring in unlimited illegals from anywhere in the world, and he's still doing it. That's called dictatorship. And the Texas Attorney General that was suing him, well, he's been indicted. See how they operate? They're taking the gloves off people. And their operators are criminally committed. And a lot of Republican leadership is scared and is saying, I will salute you when you say jump. I'm going to ask how high. You think cowering to that's going to get us out of this? Rolling over to these wolves means we're going to get our guts torn out first. They're going to take their time eating us politically. You know that's what wolves do. I'll go back to the allegory of wolves like I did yesterday. With animals that don't fight back, if you fight back, wolves try to get into your throat and kill you quicker than eat you. But if you just sit there and beg and don't fight back, they start on your rear end and they tear your guts out the rear end and eat you that direction forward. And sheep and cows that are stuck in the mud sometimes take a day before they're dead. They leave the heart beating right there to keep it fresh while they eat the meat right on up. I'm not going to sit there and lay over and show my belly to the wolves, because I'm not a sheep. I'm a sheepdog, and I'm going to get my teeth into their legs and their throat, and I'm going to crush them politically. Because I'm not a loser, and I'm not a slave of this scum, these parasitical, criminal maggots that hate you and your family, and hate my family. They are enemies. They are declared enemies of humanity. They are declared dark side parasites. Literal servants of the devil. You got me on that yet? This is a short segment, long segment. Let me just get calm and cover news. They're just such enemies. They hate us so much. They hate the local governments. They hate the local establishments. Prosperity is what freedom brings. Even corrupt people shouldn't want a total evil to come in. This will destroy everyone except the enemy at the top, and then they'll be screwed. But it's their nature. They can't help it. Do you understand that? They are of their father, and their lust are for death. All those that hate me love death, Christ said. Never truer words spoken. All those that hate me love death. I told people 19 years ago with George Woolley, the local Catholic anti-abortion crusader, that they were selling baby parts and keeping babies alive to harvest them. And we had insiders and all the rest of it. That was known then. And people say, you whacked out pro-lifers. That's not going on. Now that it's all admitted and caught on tape, it's like big deal. See how they operate? See how what they do? Folks, the baby harvesting is nothing. The big banks run the child kidnapping. They run the snuff films. That's been in the Washington Post back in the 80s. Let me explain. They grab 3-year-olds out of their backyards and they torture them and then blow their heads off on video. That's who runs this government. Now, the average general's not involved. They're compartmentalized. The average senator's not involved. It's the shadow government operating under COG at the top. There's only a few thousand of these people, but let me tell you, they are what the archetypes of something like Count Dracula is. They're not real vampires that blow up in the sunlight. That's an allegory that light kills them. Truth kills them. We've got to drag them out in the sun at high noon and watch them burn. And they will, but you've got to shine the light on them. If you go to Infowars.com or PrisonPlanet.com, or if you go to our Facebook mentions, or you go to any of our sites that show metrics, our YouTube channels, there's many points, you will see that our videos now are getting 800,000 views, 1 million views. Individual videos every few days. Normally we put out, say, let's not exaggerate, 150, 200 videos a week. Maybe one of those gets 1 million views. Now we'll have 10, 15 that get 1 million views. And you have to understand, guys, go to the Facebook mentions, because that just shows videos that just went up in the last few hours. Go to our Facebook mentions on Alexander Jones. Click on the video tab. You can see one that has 800,000 views from a couple days ago. Again, I'm directing the TV show right now, / radio show in live time. And it does show as a metric that people are waking up, that people are getting involved, that people are aware that we are in a crisis as a civilization, and that is very good news. Mainstream media is not going to ever tell you that patriots have power or that there are people that want liberty and freedom and free market systems and rule of law from Latin America to Africa to Asia to Europe. They're there to make you feel like you're bad, you're evil, because you stand up for freedom. But I'm here to tell you, just Infowars.com. And what I do, as radical as it sounds, and as radical as I put things, because I'm not going to mince words, I'm going to tell you what I really think's going on. I'm going to jump up and down, because I'm here to tell you the ship's sinking. We've got to get out of this trance. We've got to have cold water thrown on us to wake up and get out of our collective beds, because the house is on fire. And it's effective. And that's why Donald Trump, whether you love him or hate him or in between, is so effective, because he doesn't apologize. He doesn't back off. The more controversies he's in, the more they spin things, the more they attack him, the more he becomes popular. Because people don't trust the dinosaur media. They don't trust the Decepticon media. They don't trust the enemy media anymore. And so you think about the fact that my broadcast is getting picked up by all these new stations every month. It's growing by leaps and bounds on every metric, on every format, in the face of almost all other media, even if it's been popular, even if it's been patriot, even if it's been libertarian, stagnating or getting smaller because there's so much more competition out there. So InfoWars is pretty much about as radical as it gets, and it's the fastest growing. But I'm not radical. A bunch of world leaders meeting, eating $1,000 a plate meals on red carpets and jumbo jets with surveillance blimps over Paris, surveilling everyone illegally, but letting the jihadis in, calling for world government and world taxes selectively to shut down certain nations and companies is outrageous. It's run down the street naked screaming. Now, if I ran down the street naked screaming, it would be somewhat discrediting. But I got to tell you, I think in the long run, it would be seen as probably the right thing to do, because that's how crazy stuff's gotten, and we've got to get people out of their comfort zones and realize stuff's out of control. And I'm not advocating running down the street naked. I mean that as a figurative archetype. Run down the street with my hair on fire, like Blackbeard. You know, he did that to get attention and scare people when he boarded their boats. He'd put a bunch of matches and candles in his beard, in his hair, and light himself on fire, so they'd see a guy with his teeth bared, his eyes glaring, with a knife in his mouth, screaming with a bunch of other wild killers in a murder rage. They do that to get people's attention. You know what skull and crossbones meant? A black flag means I don't surrender. A white flag means I surrender. A skull on it means we're going to kill you if you don't surrender. A skull with blood dripping out of it means we're going to kill you even if you do surrender. We're total psychos. Fight to the death. Well, I'm not saying run around with a skull and crossbones on a black flag to the New World Order. What I'm saying is they are flying that flag. They got a big bloody red skull on a black background. That's their real symbol inside Skull and Bones, with a crown on its head. A bloody red skull with a crown on its head. And that's what they worship. The pirate king, the pirate god, come to feed on you and your family. They were broken into about 100 years ago. That was confirmed. And it's been confirmed by people whose fathers and others were members of Skull and Bones. You go, Red Skull, I've heard of that, Marvel Comics. Everything you basically see in most fiction is a mirror of what's already going on as they throw it in your face. A big blood-dripping skull on a black background with a gold crown on its head. You want to know the type of folks we're fighting? Who has a flag of a bloody skull with fiery eyes and a crown? Robert De Niro made The Good Shepherd about it when they dress up like their god, the devil, in a black shroud with a skull mask and a gold crown. In fact, if people don't believe me, Skull and Bones ritual, The Good Shepherd, I know it's online. We can actually show them bathing in feces, our Christian leaders, conservative leaders mainly, and worshiping the devil. And I only bring this up to you so that you can understand who these people are. And so that you can understand that this isn't a game. And, of course, who is in The Good Shepherd? Matt Damon. Alec Baldwin, you've been very helpful for me. Without further ado, let me stop ranting and get to the news here ahead of multiple guests that are going to be joining us today. First off, this is not a gimmick. It'd be okay if it was a gimmick because it funds the operation. We really gauge things. And if we do free shipping but don't sell a bunch of products, we lose money, actually. It's an actuary. You have to break down the numbers. You have to look at it. If we do too big of sales, but they're not huge, then we don't make enough money to buy more product or fund the operation, and it's a failure. And I've had some sales over the years that were not really failures, but were duds. Didn't really get us in the black very much. But I've learned just the bigger the sales, the better the products, the more free shipping, the more we sell by a huge amount. And then I'm sitting here looking from, can I give people a Christmas bonus? Do I have to let somebody go? This is a month ago. This is an expensive operation to, oh my gosh, I'm going to hire a couple of reporters and get some more writers and give people Christmas bonuses. And, you know, I'm personally going to give some turkeys to, you know, the Salvation Army. That's where we've gotten with you with this Black Friday sale, buying so much product. It's been hugely successful. Now, the profits aren't as big per sale, obviously, because the sales are so huge. In fact, where's my battery charger thing? It was in here. I guess folks ran off with that. Can I have the product in here to show folks? We are selling out of basically everything. At this rate, the power pack will sell out by next week. And I'll tell you why. This is a third the size or less of a briefcase. It'll jump cars. It has jumper cables. It charges basically everything from USB to micro USB with a flashlight, everything else. I love these. My whole family loves these. I went and found the latest, newest, cutting-edge one. In 6 months, it'll be, there'll be something a little bit better. We'll be selling that. Don't worry. And I private labeled it so that we can sell it for $119. The leading competitor isn't as good, has a third less power, and is $150. This same unit, not private labeled by us, is over $160. That's with regular retailers. Amazon is like $140. We have it for $119. The exact same unit. Do you know how we were able to do it? Well, I bought thousands of them, and I private labeled it. None of the contracts, I can go even lower. No one is as aggressive as me. I mean, I'm just going to tell you point blank. Colloidal silver 2-ounce bottles, 30 parts per million from the leading manufacturer in the country, private labeled, $9.95 right now. So I'm extending through the 18th. That's the day we can guarantee you'll get it in the United States. If somebody doesn't steal your packages, man, there's an epidemic of that right now. I'm just going to tell folks, not really with us, but with people I know, and it's happening all over. But the issue is, you order by the 18th, and you will get free shipping and guaranteed delivery inside the 48. It's got to be the 17th of December to get it in Hawaii or Alaska before Christmas, on the 23rd, 24th. And this is so popular, I wish I would have ordered, 5,000 of them instead of 1,000 of them, because at this price, it will sell out by next week. The InfoWars Premium Power Pack Supercharger. And it's portable power bank for electronic devices, LED torch function for emergency lighting, and super powerful high-efficiency jump starter for emergency starting, and a whole bunch more. And it's got the jumper cables included. It is incredible. If your wife doesn't have this in her car, if you don't have this in your car, you are nuts. You are crazy. Just about a month ago, I left the lights on, not thinking, because I'd gone back out to the car, gotten something, gone back in, and I came out and the car wouldn't start. I didn't go to the garage and get the big charger, didn't go and plug it in, didn't pull the car up, got this unit out, the Proto unit, before we even had them in, hooked it up, and it took about 2 seconds longer than with a regular big jumper to start the car. Let the car run for 10 minutes, turned it back off, went back in, came back out, went to work. So this unit is available at InfoWarsStore.com, the InfoWars Premium Power Pack Supercharged. And it's the best we can get for the price right now, the best cutting edge, strongest, highest quality there is, according to our research. And I'll tell you, this stuff advances so fast, it's really amazing technology, how small it's getting. In 6 months, we'll have something new even better. But this currently is an absolute to have in your house, in your hunting shack, in your fishing shack, in your car, at work, whatever the case is. I'd buy 3 or 4 of these at this price. It makes a great Christmas gift. That's another way to fund the InfoWars. Shop with the Patriots. Buy the other high-quality nutraceuticals and the other specials we've got running. Get free shipping. Get a PrisonPlanet.tv membership. 20 people can use that. Give that as an e-gift. I mean, it's just a win-win. Then you fund our operation. And if tons of you come and buy the products, we can just lower prices and be even more competitive. Nothing succeeds like success. And the success of this InfoWar is forging a weapon to assault the globalist. You can get a free ebook, Keys to Survival, with a bunch of top experts like Joel Scalzi and others, a real ebook. I mean, it's thick. By signing up at Infowars.com/newsletter, we're going to send that back out today. Get Keys to Survival. We've got 25% off Super Male and Super Female Vitality. It has to end today. We're going to have now specials each day that have to end with stuff that's about to sell out, because it will sell out in just a few days at this current rate. Won't get more till next year. $9.95 Silver Bullet. That's going to probably go through the whole week. We may have enough. 30% off X2 Nascent Iodine. You're going to have to end that in a couple days. 30% off Brain Force. Have to end that. 33% off DNA Force. That's going to end in a few days. It's about to sell out. 30% off Secret 12, Vitamin B12. 20% off InfoWars Select Storable Food. InfoWarsLife.com or 888-253-3139. And you're fighting the tip of the spear in the fight against the globalists. Free shipping now runs to the 18th. And then I'm not bringing it back for months, because we just can't afford it. When sales go way down, we can't afford to pay the $5-10 for the shipping. Sometimes it's more, depending on how big stuff you order. But we can do it right now because of the huge bulk purchasing. Our prices go down with UPS, FedEx, and USPS. It's all scalability. So again, thank you for your support. This will help put us in the black for months and months, hopefully, because we are self-funded. And support our local AM and FMs. It's just as important to support that local sponsor and let them know why, or to become a local sponsor, or to just send in $100 or $1,000 to your local station. Well, this is a war, folks. It takes money to win. We still have the grassroots numbers and the financing to defeat the globalists if patriots start spending money. And I mean, go get your own radio show. Go to a local station and say, I want to pay for an hour on your station. Get on there and talk about the New World Order. You're not going to save the world, but together we are. Get vocal, get active, get aggressive, become a local sponsor, spread the word, buy an ad in the paper for the show, and tell folks how they can tune in. Whatever. Or get your own show. Just fight. Fight. We're under attack, for heaven's sakes. I mean, it's ridiculous how obvious it is. We can mobilize, we can defeat, but we've got to have a heart beating in our chest. We've got to take action. Okay, I'm going to do a 1-minute plug next hour. I did like a 5-minute plug. I just kind of condensed it. I apologize. Let me just move on now. I'm just very excited that we're able to continue what we're doing. And I've sent Joe Biggs on a secret mission. He'll start reporting tonight. It is a dangerous mission with Josh Owens and Michael Zimmerman, so pray for them. And I'm not going to announce what they're doing until they're on the ground and are already out of there and they can report from a distance. They're going to be visiting 5 cities in the United States. And I'm just going to leave it at that. I'm going to stop right there. It's important. It's going to be very illustrative of everything that's happening. That'll start tomorrow. And we've got something just as big as that. And this is about as big as it gets tomorrow as well. But I don't like to count my chickens before they're hatched. I don't count a fish until it's in the boat, gaffed and in the freezer. Well, really until I'm frying it a couple hours later on shore, but until it's in my guts. But that's what winning's all about, taking action, and we're doing it. And let me tell you, fortune favors the bold, providence favors the committed, the bold, the crazed. And I am crazed. I am crazed in the enemy's face. I'm in a fight. I know I'm in danger. I know I've committed my name, my treasure, my family to the fight. And you know what? It feels good. Because now I can just begin to join my forebears that died in the Texas Revolution. I can join my forebears that died in 1776 in the next 6 years. I can join those that came across on the Mayflower. I can join those daring crusaders. I can just begin to approach the level they're at. And it's not through arrogance. It's not through a power trip I want to do that. It's I want to live. I want to be bold. I want to be creative. I want to be strong. I want to live up to the ideals that our founders had and their belief in Christ. And it takes aggressive men to defeat the New World Order. They've taken that from us. I mean, you know how aggressive our forebears were? They'd be running around killing people right now for what's going on. But we're in a new modern war where they want that. We're winning the info war, and we're killing their fake ideas. We're killing their lies. We are stabbing them and bayoneting them and foaming at the mouth. They want to fight. They've got one. They want to go head-to-head. I'm committed. I'm going all the way, and nothing feels more committed. Nothing feels better than not being a coward and being strong. All they can take is your honor. All they can take is your soul. And they take your soul, they take everything. So why would you bow to the enemy through fear? They can take nothing from us. Why would we want to give that to them? There's not even a debate about this. All right, I'm done preaching. I apologize. We're going to come back straight ahead and get into the World Government Conference, the most important in history, in their words, with the greatest assemblage of world leaders.
You don't close your mind, so they shape you.
U.S. carbon emissions down 10% in past decade. You know what that means? 10% of our energy has been cut off as our population went up 34 million people in the last 10 years. It's down 10.2%. Now, they actually cut off more than a third of our coal power, but they allowed General Electric to build hundreds of new plants while shutting off over 1,000 others. I mean, you talk about a military op, that's it. Shut down everybody else, then everybody's going to buy it from you for increased prices. But there's still less power. But they want you to be prosperous, poor people. Obama loves you. How you like that black unemployment doubling? Doesn't matter, though. He had George Soros tell you it's the cops' fault, so just shoot one of them in the back of the head. That'll fix everything, according to them. No, that'll just cause a civil war and the police state to come in, which they'll use to crack down on everybody, just like they let in the radical jihadis in Europe, and now they're taking the conservative group's rights and arresting front-runners in presidential elections like Marie Le Pen. That's hardcore. Wow, that's incredible. It's so over the top, the suspension of logic, the outrageousness of it, the insolence. U.S. carbon emissions down 10% in the past decade. Breitbart, according to EPA, carbon emissions in the U.S. have fallen 10.2%. By the way, China's are up over 30%. Since then, they have to make zero cuts. Oh, I wonder where the jobs will go if their power's about, what, last time I checked, less than 20% the cost of ours. Oh, where would you build something that had power that in many cases is 20, 30, 40% of the cost of a factory? We can't compete with that. No way. And then you add the slave labor and all the rest of it and the internal tariffs of the yuan being kept undervalued. But that's okay. People don't need to know economics, do they? Our government loves this is why they did that. Obama trip to the UN Global Warming Summit amidst CO2. More CO2 than driving 72 cars for a year. And everyone always points out that that's, terrible hypocrisy. They want the hypocrisy. He walks off jumbo jets and gives a speech on the tarmac saying you can't have cars and air conditioners. That's the whole point. Here's another one. Look at this photo. Warmers dine on fancy cuisine as they plot global redistribution. Obama dined at the Haute Cuisine, that's super fancy, with global leaders at the Global Warming Summit. And again, ladies and gentlemen, now we learn typical Christian conservative who reportedly had sex crime records, was a huge liberal, identified as a woman, was a cross-dresser. Killer Robert Louis Deere was into spanking bondage and smoking pot. Probably a wind-up toy on amnesics. He fits the bill of it being staged. Then they just have their assassins wait, kill a few cops, get out the back door, have him drugged up, not knowing who he is. That's how they run these ops. Sirhan, you name it. Police, if you're not totally controlled, you got to look into this being a setup. I smell it. I think it is. Probably is. We'll be back. Seriously, my gut's never wrong. There's a video. Liberals propose bringing migrants into the U.S. to house them, but then when they're asked, will you house some, they say no. You see, it's about making you pay. Breaking the law. And that's what they're doing is they are breaking the law, opening our borders up, and Saudi Arabia, I have it here in the stack, will not take one, this is now 3 months, 4 months running, one refugee. They have trillions of dollars, over 10,000 princes paid millions or billions a year, depending on who they are, in the line of ascension to the toilet bowl that is the House of Saud. And it's like a ramp up to a giant toilet, and then they ascend, and then they jump into it. Once they get up there to the top. Obama's trip to the UN Global Warming Summit amidst more than 72 cars driving for a year. They're eating caviar meals at taxpayer expenses. Meanwhile, why do Goldman Sachs bankers keep landing top slots at the Federal Reserve? Every major central bank of the world is run by a Goldman Sachs or J.P. Morgan former president or CEO or chairman. That's on record. They now appoint leaders of Spain and of Greece and of Italy and of Portugal and of, who are former directors of Goldman Sachs. Goldman Sachs sits at the top of the pyramid, at the top of the toilet. So that's out of the nation. It's just, who do you think gives money to the gun control groups? Who do you think gives money to teach 5-year-olds how to be transgender? Who do you think wants to? They are the literal embodiment of enemies. Who do you think's the main funders of making you have a 200-something square foot house by law that you pay more property taxes on than a mansion? Who do you think then owns those filthy buildings? Goldman Sachs or Wells Fargo and Berkshire Hathaway, because when they're not flying jumbo jets full of crack or prisoners, to black sites, they're owning the house you rent. They're owning the condo you rent, laughing at you and lobbying to get property taxes raised so high on private owners that you can't afford it because there's a rent anyways, which you then pay to have your kids brainwashed at a government training center. And Goldman Sachs isn't that smart. We're chumps and we're stupid. It's why we live under the Goldman Sachs thumb. In fact, can we get under my thumb coming back in the next segment? I want to dedicate it to Goldman Sachs. Under my thumb. The girl who once had me down under my thumb. You like being a slave? Well, I don't. I know most of you don't either. Major powers pledged $20 billion for green energy research. That means to their select friends and families like Harry Reid's sons who've gotten hundreds of millions themselves. Or, you know, Joe Biden's son over in Ukraine gets to head up the gas company that just grabbed all the Russian gas. Just, oh, here's my 20-something-year-old son. Here, you go run the Russian gas. How's that sound, son? Oh, but they're pledging to save us and for us to pay them carbon taxes. Aren't they so sweet? You talk about insider trading. You talk about scams. You talk about bid rigging. You talk about conflict of interest. Baby, this is it. But don't worry. The Texas Attorney General at a dinner party reportedly told people what he thought a good investment was and didn't tell them that he'd formerly worked for the company but hadn't been working with them for a year and a half. And so those good friends at dinner got that report in, so he's been indicted. And don't worry, she sold a couple of $100,000 of stock. You know, Martha Stewart went to prison. She didn't do the insider trading. They said she lied. Of course, she didn't. You know, don't worry, Dinesh D'Souza went to jail for 9 months for, you know, being involved in a campaign. But don't worry, Hillary can take money from dictators, billions of it, at her foundation for selling them illegal weapons and arming al-Qaeda. That's okay, okay? I just saw Dianne Feinstein looking like a Skeksis on C-SPAN in the break room. She looked like an old vulture with her head sticking out, an old buzzard, feeding on, I don't know, aborted babies or something. And her head was sticking out with this fuzzy white fur coat around her with black beside that. And she looked like a classical vulture from the Middle East. The ones you see in cartoons. In fact, can we DVR that? Because I want to put her side by side with a buzzard or a vulture. And I don't normally make comments about how somebody looks. But when the book cover fits, why not? I mean, this is a parasite who wants your guns but has bodyguards, made hundreds of millions off the government and inside deals, perched up there on C-SPAN, griping and complaining about how people are mean to gays. Mean to gays? Total distraction. I never let my children watch mainstream television. Very rarely. And last night, it was about 9 o'clock. I let them stay up a little bit later after dinner. I said, okay, let's watch some mainstream television and analyze it. So I'm sitting there on the couch, and I put the WWE on. And I'm watching about 20 minutes of it, and there's more ads than there is content. And the whole thing was homoerotic. It was women all over each other, and then it was men, and it was saying, this guy likes this guy with hearts. And my 7-year-old looks over at me right as I'm thinking, no, this is all gay propaganda. My 7-year-old daughter looks over and she goes, Dad, is this show about people that are gay? Because that's just what a 7-year-old who's somewhat sheltered gets out in the culture that's so immersed in this assault. And I'm not bashing homosexuals. I'm tired of being told what words to use. You know, I'm a heterosexual. Well, I can call you a homosexual. It's just a scientific term. Like calling the Himalayas or the Rockies the Rockies. Don't use the word the Rockies. It's hateful. I mean, this is the crazy town of political correctness. But this is the assault that we're under, where the tolerant West is told you can't say the word father or mother or boy or girl or he or she in school handouts or in articles or in government forms. But we're going to accept a bunch of Sunni Wahhabists into the West who are running around demanding we adopt Sharia law. And I used to hear this and go, that's not happening. Guess what? From Paris to London to Dearborn, Michigan, it is. And it's all about divide and conquer. And I've got articles here I'm going to go over with Gerald Celente where they admit out of this many thousand refugees brought into the United States just in the last few weeks, not one was a Christian. And they're the groups being attacked and actually killed by the hundreds of thousands in Syria. And the Shiites, the minority Muslims, are being tracked down and killed. The Alawites and others that are really just like Sufis. They're mystics. I wouldn't even call them Muslims. They're what was before that. It's crazy. And notice they're not Shiite, they're not Christian. They're not the actual groups getting killed. They're who our government's allied with, who they brought into Syria to overthrow the nation. And now, I want to talk about this first with Gerald Celente. How many times has the trends forecaster here, needs no introduction, said, when the economy implodes, they take you to war. And when people lose everything, they lose it. We've got his latest trends journal right here. He has written, Colonel Craig Roberts has been on the show. Paul Craig Roberts, who writes for him, has made the same point. Colonel Schaefer's made the same point. Countless others have said it. Pat Buchanan wrote about it this week. This could start the next world war. Russia prepares for dogfights with NATO over Syria, moving in their most high-tech fighters. S-400 missiles were moved in last week. World War III draws closer as Russia accuses Turkey of being secret allies with ISIS. Sweden says no apartments, no jobs, no shopping. You have to make way for the migrants. Woman raped by migrants, asked police not to prosecute because it's politically correct. Russia has more proof ISIS oil routed through Turkey. Erdogan says he'll resign if true. It's on record that's where they sell it. The U.S. has all the satellite images. Saudi Arabia complains about hostility towards refugees while taking in zero when they ran the whole attack on Syria. This is the information. Migrants attack police at Macedonia, puts up fence along Greek border. They're not migrants. They're military-age men invading who failed to take over Syria and now aren't going back into Iraq, aren't going back into other countries where they also invaded. They're coming through Turkey where the open door by the West is saying, come in. You got rocket launchers? Come on. And thousands in big hordes just marching in. But Lindsey Graham says he wants U.S. troops to come back into Iraq and Syria when he and McCain have been backing the actual Sunnis that started the whole thing. And in Europe, they're arresting people like Marie Le Pen, who says that there's a radical Islamic invasion for her speech. They've suspended free speech in France and Germany. And here in America, 15 people last month were charged with terrorism for having rebel flags at a park and offending people. I mean, this is how far we've gone into total tyranny. Oh, Marie Le Pen's a front runner in presidential election polls. Oh, her party just won the regional elections all over the country. We'll just arrest you. And then say we're going to pass global government carbon taxes and the TPP, basically ratify it globally to stand up against the terrorist when it's the world leaders that brought in the terrorist. Gerald Celente, so much to cover, but I don't think I've seen a time in the last 30 years this geopolitically dangerous, and it's so disgusting to see Russia, in my view, on the right moral side. As much as I don't want to see them bombing a country, they are bombing the people that are actually starting the war. Disagree, agree? Where do you see this going? What are the trends? Trendsresearch.com.
Well, on Russia, they were invited into Syria by the sovereign government, like Assad or not. You know, they had an election, by the way, in June of 2014, and there were some 50 nations that oversaw the election and said it was a legitimate election, and Assad won. So Russia was invited into a sovereign nation by the sovereign leader of that nation, where the United States, the Arabs who you were talking about, the beheaders in chief, the Saudis, where they had 50 people lined up for beheading this coming week. They've already done over 200. they've attacked and supported the so-called moderate rebels, the Islamist jihadists that are overthrowing the Assad government, as you pointed out, an Alawite government that made it possible for Christians and Sunnis and Shias to live together, like him or not, consider how brutal he is, whatever it may be, that's the fact. But all these other nations now, France in there, the UK is voting to start bombs away. The Germans are sending troops into Syria. One country after another invading a sovereign nation against international law. And here in what used to be called the United States, where we've lost our rights, our commander-in-chief decides we're going to bomb Syria, and Congress refuses to vote on it. And according to what used to be called the Constitution, the United States is not supposed to invade another country, attack another country, go to war with another country unless Congress votes on it. And they won't even vote on the War Powers Act to give the commander the right to go in there. So in talking about all this, let's begin with, and as you pointed out, all this stuff about, these diversion things, about gay rights, about whatever something may be about, not, look what happened in Halloween, wearing the proper Halloween costumes, all these diversionary tactics, as no one's talking about the mass murder committed by the mass murderers, which the United States is right up at the top over there because of, the other con man, the George W. Bush and Colin Powell and Condoleezza Rice and Rumsfeld and Wolfowitz that sent us to war. Cheney. I forgot Cheney.
And Colin Powell didn't get in any trouble for all the BS that came out of Colin Powell. It's just incredible to see them distract us with transgender bathrooms for 5-year-olds and everyone complaining about how the gays don't have enough freedom all day, while our governments engage in mass murder war crimes with al-Qaeda blowing up every church they get their hands on and blocking major routes in the Mediterranean, acts of war against Russian ships. This is just over the top how dangerous it is.
Yes, and again, when we look at the facts, the numbers coming out, over 1 million people have been killed in Iraq and Afghanistan, Libya and Syria, thanks to the United States and its coalition of the killing. Alex, I think they should put together maybe a commission to study how radicals come about after their entire nations are destroyed, the people they love are killed, they have no future in front of them. I wonder why they become radicalized. I can't figure it out. And none of this is being talked about when they talk about the refugee crisis. Yeah, what happened in Syria? Over 4 million families. And by the way, 2 of my friends that are doctors, Christians, that had to leave over 2 years ago, that are now up in Canada, that were living a wonderful life because Hillary came out and said, Assad has to go. Obama, Assad has to go. Kerry, Assad has to go. Who are these people? I'll tell you who they are. They're traitors to this country. Anybody that goes into a foreign nation unwelcome by those people and they are not a threat to the United States is a traitor to everything this country's been founded upon.
You're right, and now it's created giant threats to this nation. And after they destabilize the Middle East in this 20-year program, they then radicalize and fund the most vicious jihadis, quarterbacked by Saudi Arabia, then destabilize the whole world. Then they pose as saviors yet again. What is their end game?
Sick people have no end game. Why can't anyone call a spade a spade? A megalomaniac, a megalomaniac. A Hitler, a Mussolini, a Mussolini. A Bush, Obama, a Cheney, psychopaths. Hillary Clinton, could you get a better psychopath than her? Look at that clip on CBS when she was asked, how did she feel when they found out Muammar Gaddafi was dead? And she goes on to that rant. We came, we saw.
He died.
He died. They should have came out with a straitjacket and took her away.
Absolutely. That's what mentally ill people do. I mean, I'll tell you, like commandos, military people that have to kill folks, if any of them acted like that after they killed people, they would be thrown out of their unit. That is seen as mentally ill sickness, and that's when you have to actually kill folks yourself. You don't like doing it. Here's Gaddafi, worked with the West for 8 years, let us in, gave up his weapons, invested, met with Obama, believed he was their friend, had dinner with him and Sarkozy, and they literally set him up and killed him and put al-Qaeda in charge. And then took the weapons from Benghazi, killed Ambassador Stevens to cover it up, and shipped the missiles into Syria, which they're now using to shoot down airliners and blow stuff up. It is incredible.
I know. And you look at Libya, it was the richest country in Africa. The people had the best lives. You know, again, it's not my business how some other country runs the other person runs their country. But as they're yelling about this, Samantha Powers, Susan Rice, and Hillary Clinton and Obama, that Gaddafi has to go, the meantime, they're slaughtering people over there in Yemen. We wrote about it in the Trends Journal. The day Obama came out and said the terrible things that Gaddafi was doing, the guy that was in charge of Yemen, Salah, had just slaughtered about 50 people demonstrating. That didn't make the news. Just as it's not making the news now, Alex, as the Saudis, as Hillary and Obama and McCain and little Lindsey Graham call our allies, the beheaders-in-chief are slaughtering Yemenis for doing nothing. Over 7,000 of them.
And they're now
dead.
executing people for poetry.
And again, they're bombing Yemen. It's not making the news. And then you saw the deal that came out 2 weeks ago. The United States sold Saudi Arabia $2 billion worth of, quote, smart bombs. And who's in charge of the mass murder going on in Yemen that's not making the news? It's Yemen. Now the United Arab Emirates are bringing in mercenaries from South America to go into there, along with Qatar and Kuwait. And also, when was the war against Yemen announced? It was announced on March 26, 2015, from Washington, D.C., the Saudi ambassador. And then we saw this little guy, Blinken, who plays an assistant secretary of something, over in Riyadh right after they start bombing, and says how the United States is an ally in this murder, supplying reconnaissance, air refueling, intelligence, and armaments. It's not even making the news. And then, Alex, I wonder why they hate us. I don't understand. Only because we're part and parcel, Murderers Incorporated, slaughtering people around the world. And then they want to seek revenge. I don't understand.
Sure. Well, if you add a dimension to that, though, the people attacking us are the groups we're actually allied with, backing to slaughter the Shiites and other groups. So it even goes beyond that. In your gut, historically, you know, as a former lobbyist and you know, guy involved at state and federal government, knowing how these corporations operate, my fear is we've got politicians so far removed from the military field of battle, they're not even listening to our own generals saying, don't back this Assad takedown, don't back al-Qaeda. They've been saying that for 3 years. And we know they've tried to put the brakes on things. I'm really concerned with the Wall Street, Goldman Sachs reckless attitude that they have in the stock market and other areas. They're going to apply that to war, push Russia too far, and get us into something very serious. I mean, Russia has said that they're getting ready to shoot down Turkish aircraft now that come into Syria. Turkey says that's an act of war. They're going to attack. They're now launching blockades of the Russians. This is unprecedented acts of war, as Ron Paul and others have said. And meanwhile, I see people sleepwalking talking about Christmas coming up, having no idea how serious the situation is.
Yeah, you're right. And let's go back into Turkey and look what happened in June when Erdogan lost that election, when they didn't get a majority. And then immediately after that, what did he do? He started war again against the Kurds. And then what happened? And then all of a sudden, a bunch of peaceful demonstrators were slaughtered in Ankara. And then what happened? He won the election. From a time when it looked almost improbable, he's back in power. They do this all the time, by the way. You were talking earlier about France with Le Pen. Hollande, that little boy of a guy, little nothing of a man, his popularity rating, Alex, is the lowest in the history of the Fifth Republic. But after the Paris attacks, shot up 17%. Go back to 2001. George W. Bush.
Got a 90% approval rating in the month after 9/11.
And his popularity rating after only being in office a few months was going under 50%.
And then it shot back up.
Exactly. Go back to Turkey. Go back. You asked me what their end game is, and I'm saying to you, these are sick people. They're megalomaniacs.
Sure, so to stay in power, and he's basically a dictator, that's the minute he stole the election, to stay in power, he's starting a war with Russia, not a very good idea. He is a sicko.
Exactly. And you don't poke the Russian bear. Anybody thinks they're going to defeat Russia, yeah, you did a great job in Afghanistan. Oh, a wonderful job in Iraq. Hey, Syria. You know, I was thinking of going to Tripoli for my vacation. Libya, rather. Syria, destroying it. And it's one mess after another. So you're going to fight Russia? You have to be out of your mind.
And then Obama gets up in grandstands and says Russia is causing the problems in Syria. This is totally, again, an inversion of reality. And then we see Hollande saying, I protect you from terrorists by banning free speech across France, and then arresting his enemies when he's the guy that brought the radical jihadis in. It's so ridiculous.
Yes, and you mentioned about the United States supporting the radical people that then become our enemies. Did anyone forget little Jimmy Carter and the Mujahideen, those freedom fighters, and then through Reagan to get those Russians out of Afghanistan? And who was the Mujahideen? Wasn't it a guy named bin Laden was a member of that group?
That's right. Stay there. I want to look at the economy. I want to give the number out and take some calls and go wherever you want to go with Gerald Celente on this live Tuesday, December 1st, 2015 global transmission. I want to break something down. The globalist social engineers, they engage in hypocrisy openly to break our will and condition us like you titrate the dose of cobra poison if you work with cobras at a zoo or you work at a facility extracting anti-venom, you're going to get bit. And so the people that work at those facilities slowly give themselves the different toxins, the neurotoxins, the other toxins that snakes can put off, until you can take a huge cobra bite and not die in 30 seconds or 2 minutes, like a 20-foot king cobra would do to you, because it pumps so much of it into you, it's so deadly. But this is not having a dosage of poison titrated so that we actually can survive. This is conditioning us to where we just put up with tyranny and get used to anything and everything and basically end up in a totally captured position. And on a first-class flight on American Airlines to be on The View, I've told this story many times, like 6, 7 years ago, there was the head of one of the big 5 banks. And I said, why aren't you flying, in your own private jet? And he goes, I was seeing my dad, retired general down in San Antonio, and whatever. I just don't like to mess with the private jets. I get on them sometimes for corporate stuff. And by the end of the plane ride, about an hour into it, we didn't talk much. He goes, you're Alex Jones. And then he was just basically telling me, you're going to fail. We're going to win. People are going to adapt, but not to resisting our takeover. They're going to adapt to us enslaving them. And people say, well, why don't you tell us his name? He said, this is an off-record discussion. He's told me what a failure I was and how pathetic I was and how they were going to win. He was super confident, super evil, super in my face. And then I wouldn't stop talking to him, and he kind of just said, hey, I'm done talking to you. But he said, private corporations will take over all governments. We will run the world. We know how to handle it best. And I was like, but you're wrecking the economies and then saying you're handling them best. Last night I was watching History Channel after this Donald Trump special they had, and they had this whole show about how great the robber barons were and how great the Rockefellers were and how they built America and how they love us, how they took over medicine. And of course, I know the real history. On record, it's horrible what they've done. They funded Hitler, for heaven's sakes. They didn't get into altruism. They didn't get into being philanthropists because they wanted to give away their money. They made their money tax exempt in foundations and paid no taxes. Just like Bill and Melinda Gates. It's a known scam. Their wealth's only gotten bigger. It was like 80 billion, and they gave like 60 billion, and now that 60 billion is over 100 billion, and they've got another 80, 90 billion just right. I mean, who was that famous billionaire lady? She said, taxes, rich people don't pay taxes. That's actually true. You make $200,000 a year, the average blue-collar worker thinks you're rich. You pay 40% federal. But you make billions a year, you basically pay nothing. They got it all worked out. We're going back to Gerald Celente. 800-259-9231. 800-259-9231 is your chance as first-time callers. We're doing a few calls for Gerald Celente. First-time callers to bring up subjects, trends, questions, comments you have. 800-259-9231. I want to get into the economy, other big trends he sees, the election. But first, very briefly, we have free shipping that was going to end yesterday. I've just decided it's so popular. People like it so much. I want to introduce you to the products, all the great items we have, non-GMO seeds, high-quality water filters, incredible nutraceuticals, colloidal silver, 2-ounce bottles, $9.95, the highest quality, Brain Force, Living Defense, huge specials across the board that I'm just going to keep it going until December 18th. And I promise it will end then because sales historically go down so low that we can't take the shipping off. We then lose money and can't even run the operation. But when we get a lot of orders, we can actually lower prices. That's how economies work. Booming economies basically raise all ships. And so we've got amazing deals. We've got 25% off Super Male Vitality that does end at midnight tonight because it's going to sell out in the next few days. $9.95 Silver Bullet, 30% off X2 Nascent Iodine, 30% off Brain Force, 33% off DNA Force, 30% off Secret 12, Vitamin B12, 20% off InfoWars Select Storable Food, and more. And these specials phase out as the week goes through. Those different specials will be over. The free shipping, I decided to extend it. InfoWarsLife.com, InfoWarsStore.com, or call toll-free 888-253-3139. We've added a lot of other amazing items as well. And it's your purchase that makes this entire broadcast and everything we do possible. So we salute you and thank you because InfoWars is now having a bigger effect every day. Quite frankly, it's scary how awake people are getting, the responsibility we have. And it is because of you spreading the word and you supporting this operation. You have helped build this operation. So I want to salute you and thank you. Now, going back to Gerald Celente from TrendsResearch.com and the Trends Research Center up there in Kingston, New York, where basically the Constitutional Republic started, I want to just get in general his views on a bunch of topics, what he's researching, what the new trends are, where the economy's going, and so much more, and then some of your phone calls. Gerald Celente.
Well, thanks, Alex. First, I want to thank you for having me on and to also thank you and your team for what you're doing.
Thank you.
You know, there's that wonderful quote from Samuel Adams. It does not take a majority to prevail, rather an irate, tireless minority, keen on setting brush fires of freedom in the minds of men. And InfoWars does that. And all the people that you have with you that are out there and behind you and yourself. And there's that other great quote when people wonder what can they do and they're not doing anything, from Andrew Jackson. And he said, one courageous man makes a majority, or words to that effect. So one courageous man or woman is a majority. And I also, in listening to the products and that you're offering to your listeners, they're all high quality. When you have everything out there that's killing us with these GMOs, with all these other things that are poisoning us on a daily basis, and I think that you know that I also have an honorary doctorate in integrative and complementary medicine from the National University of Health Sciences. So I'm into this for a lot of years. And it's very important not that people only buy these products and use them for themselves, but to also to support what you're doing so that you can let the voice of freedom ring. Because as people know that are tuned in to InfoWars, 6 corporations control 90% of all of the media.
And the George Soros-run Media Matters admits they want to shut us down. They want to shut Drudge down and others like WorldNet Daily yourself down. They don't want any other voices because you've always talked about the new renaissance and people shopping local, people supporting liberty-based organizations. That's what the internal Clinton files that folks sued and got showed. They were worried in the early 90s about the rise of new media. They want a monopoly. And you've spoken so much about people voting with their dollars, changing the world.
Well, you saw it with these Christmas sales that just came out. You know, Black Friday. What a terrible name. How can you put anything, about shopping for Christmas? But anyway, there used to be about this guy Jesus. It had something to do with that. But now it's all about shopping. Anyway, there was a big resurgence, according to the latest reports that came out, in people shopping local. And that's not making much of the news. So going on to the other trends, but again, I want to encourage everybody to support what you're doing because it's not only about keeping the voice out there ringing, but also buying products that are going to help you live a healthy life.
Absolutely.
And that's one of the big trends that we're looking at, by the way, is the new trends, top trends for 2016 are coming out. One of them is artful aging. Baby boomers aren't babies no more. The leading edge of us are going to be 70 years old in 2016. When you look at the trends, America and most countries, it's a first, second, and third world nation. Only a small percentage of people are going to get it and try to do everything they can not to end up as inmates in nursing homes, which again goes back to the products that you're selling and so many others in local businesses and buy local and the anti-GMO trends. So what we're saying is, even though it's going to be a minority, when you're in a country of 315 million people plus, a minority is a big number. And you have 8 million baby boomers that are now reaching 70 years old. This is a huge market. Where do you go to for longevity centers to live healthy lives? Where are you going to go? Are you going to call it a day? The courthouse is right across the street here. And I ask people, how do you like your job? 3 years, 5 months, and 6 days. In other words, they gave up their lives for security. Now they don't have to. So you're going to become the person you said you were or could have been. Artful aging is a huge trend. Physical, emotional, spiritual. I'm not talking about religious. People that tie into that, that's going to be a big one. On the economic front, look at the data coming out. Current events form future trends. The Manufacturers Purchasing Managers Index came out today. It's well below 50%. It has to be above 50 to show growth. Below 40 shows decline. Not only decline here, but it came out last night over in China. There's indexes down again. Now you start putting things together. On Thursday, the European Union is going to, the European Central Bank is going to announce whether or not they're going to go lower into negative interest rates and more quantitative easing. Then come back to the States. They're going to have to raise interest rates at some point. Most people, the majority, in both the financial and the commodity end are believing that the Federal Reserve is going to raise interest rates maybe 25 basis points, which means nothing. It means a lot because over in Europe, if they go into more negative interest rates, you're seeing the euro decline under $1.05 to $1. What does that mean? Well, it means the people in Europe, it's going to cost them more to buy everything. But not only that, as their currencies decline, it's going to be a lot worse in the emerging markets because as the dollar gets stronger, all these emerging markets that boosted up when they had all this quantitative easing and borrowed all that cheap money in dollars, their currencies are crashing. And they have to pay back this huge debt with declining currencies against rising dollars. So we're in the face of the top trend for 2016 is a global recession. We'll look at gold prices. It has a total disconnect between what's going on in the real world and what's going on in the rigged markets. Rigged markets, LIBOR rates were rigged. It's a fact. 6 banks convicted of felonies for fixing interest rates. Oh, and the Forex markets, currency markets, that are traded at $5.3 trillion a day, convicted of felonies. But hey, nobody goes to jail when you're a member of the White Shoe Boys.
That's right, because corporations are people, so the guys that actually committed the crimes don't get in trouble. The company gets a slap on the wrist.
That's right. So look at the numbers that are coming out in the amount of gold coins, gold bullion that are being purchased in the United States and around the world. They're hitting record levels. I have some of the numbers right here. I had them right here 1 second ago. Let me see if I could find them. What did I do with them?
I know that feeling when I have stacks of news in front of me and then I want to specifically...
Here we go. U.S. demand for bars and coins up 207%. According to the World Gold Council, gold demand rose 8% on year. U.S. clocking robust global consumer demand growth at 62%. Check it out. In China, investment demand grew 70%. In China and India, they're accounting for 45% of total demand. Europe, up 35%. As you keep seeing this refugee crisis, as you keep seeing more and more turmoil, people are going for the safe haven. And guess what? It's not only we, the little crazy people, central banks, 175 tons near the record high levels for the same period last year. And this just came out. U.S. mint sales of American Eagle coins surged in November, with gold nearly tripling month over month.
So let me ask you this question. They're able to drive down precious metals, commodity prices, even though the commodities are selling at record levels. That is a rigged economy, just like the Forex, the currency, the LIBOR, the interest rates. It's all admitted to be rigged. That's all come out now, what we said 20 years ago. It's all documented now. So where does it all end? I mean, will this be the triumph of rigged economies where the insiders at the top make record profits and everybody else gets poor? Or what will happen as reality breaks away from the fraud? Will there be 2 new economies? Where's this going?
Well, again, you look at the gold sales and compare that to other commodities. Oil's down because demand is down. Nickel's down, copper's down, aluminum's down because demand is down. Gold's down because it's being rigged. Demand is way up. It shows it in the numbers.
Sure, we know they naked short, and they trade gold amongst themselves that never moves at lower prices to create artificiality. I mean, what's the answer to that? Criminal charges?
Well, the criminals are in charge. Who are they going to charge? You know, look at the guy, the criminal Eric Holder.
No, I agree. So where does it go? Where does it go then?
Well, again, it's the worst thing that could happen for the central banks that we're talking about negative interest rates, devaluing their currencies, for gold prices to go up. because then people see what a fraud it is, get out of dollars, euros, yens, and yuan. Where's it going to go? At some time, Ponzi dies. When that time will come, it's becoming harder and harder to differentiate.
Well, Ron Paul and many others think we're getting really close, and the world itself's in depression. I agree the West is in recession, but, I mean, look at what's happening in Europe and other areas. I just think a lot of this is propaganda, where they tell us the economy's great, but it's not. It's kind of unevenly distributed. We're going to come back in 2 final segments with Gerald Celente and take phone calls from all over the United States. Then we've got James Delingpole joining us on the Global Government Conference. I'm Alex Jones, your host. Thanks for joining us. We got 6 minutes now, 5 minutes the next segment. Then Gerald Celente of the Trends Research Center leaves us. We're talking to Rich in Michigan. You're on the air with Gerald Celente. Go ahead, Rich.
Hey, how you doing? How you doing, Gerald?
Gerald's good. Go ahead.
Oh, okay, yeah. So I wanted to get Gerald's take on the salvo that Hillary Clinton shot out at the comedy club. But I had an idea, because I'm not going to make a video. I just don't have the tools or whatever to do that. But my idea was to go to the comedy club myself, make a small flyer, and tell the guys at the comedy club who don't make a lot of money and offer that to them to say, hey, if you guys make a video, if you guys submit it, you can win $5,000.
Well, that's the answer, is to get comedians at comedy clubs everywhere to make fun of Hillary and then win $5,000. That's the contest, Infowars.com/contest, and it ends around Christmas, and then we'll have the winners the first of the year. And it's just about responding to her official campaign threatening to shut people down, threatening to basically break their legs. What does this say about the mindset of Hillary Clinton, Gerald Celente?
Well, again, the mindset of Hillary Clinton could be seen with all her acts of violence. Launching the war against Syria, launching the war against Gaddafi in Libya, voting for the Iraq war. Look at her husband, murderer as well. You love that Yugoslav war? Hey, how about Madeleine Albright, or not all that bright? Another psychopath on CBS after Bill Clinton put on sanctions against Iraq. People forget that Clinton was bombing Baghdad as soon as he got elected and was no-fly zones. And they asked her, Leslie Stahl asked Madeleine Albright, if the death of 500,000 Iraqi children under the age of 5 was worth the price of the sanctions.
She said yes.
And she said yes. Again, bring out the straitjacket, take them away. So what do I think
They're war criminals. They're like Hitler attacking their neighbors for no reason.
I know. And no one wants to do it. And, you know, we have our forecast that came out in the Trends Journal back in the spring when the cover was the presidential reality show, and that was before Trump got on. And we said that as things stand now, and as they still stand today, Hillary's going to win. And the reason being is that women are going to vote for her. Even though they don't like her, even though they find her disingenuous, they're going to vote for her because she's a woman. They say it all the time. Again, that's what we're finding in our research. So it doesn't make a difference. And again, when you look at the level of the politicians, could you imagine Eisenhower going on The View or yucking it up on with Jimmy Fallon?
They've dumbed everything down. Let's go to their call. Great point, Rich. Eric in California, you're on the air with Gerald Celente. Go ahead.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. I am a former Marine, 3-tour Iraq vet, and I just had a question for you guys about Obama and trying to stay in power with this going to war with Russia thing. What do you guys think about that?
Is there a danger they could start a major war with Russia and try to have a civil emergency?
I don't think they're going to try to start a war with Russia, but I do think there's going to be a civil emergency of some type. You cannot keep having all this violence without any revenge or payback. And that's going to be the excuse to let lose more of our rights, and also may be an excuse to close banks and devalue the currency, because they're going to have to do something to get them out of this mess.
Eric, don't hang up. I want to come back and get you to respond to what do you think as a veteran of openly backing al-Qaeda now, what Obama's doing, where all this is going. I want to get your view on that, your view on a civil emergency. Then we're going to go to Neil, Paul, Brandon, and others. Gerald Celente is our guest. I'm Alex Jones. Basically, it's like we have mentally ill people running the country. That's what's happening. Power mad people. And we're just jumping up and down, trying to wake the country up out of its trance to stop these people. But, Eric, you say you served 3 tours in Iraq. Now, years later, seeing what the Middle East has been turned into, what's happening in Syria, what's your view?
Me and my boys are completely pissed that they've allowed Al-Qaeda in Iraq and ISIS to retake all the ground that we've, put our blood into. We're sick of hearing about it, all of us. And I don't think any one of us would really want to go back ISIS or beat our Air Force or any of that stuff. It's just not going to happen.
Well, sure, and there was really good propaganda at the time that Saddam was behind 9/11 and the rest of it. We can look in hindsight and know that's a fraud, but I don't blame the troops who were misguided. I blame the liars that fixed the intelligence at the Pentagon. But now we know all this, and now they don't even care. They're backing al-Qaeda, al-Nusra, ISIS publicly. The Russians are calling them on it. I mean, have they jumped the shark, Gerald Celente? Thanks for the call, Eric. Have they gone too far?
Well, they've gone way too far. There's no way out. Everything that the administrations have done are failures. You're hearing one general after another coming out and saying it's a mistake. There was just a report that just came out now about a general as well, a former commander of special forces in Afghanistan and Iraq, retired Lieutenant General Michael Flynn. He told Der Spiegel, the German newspaper, he said, quote, "First we went to Afghanistan, where al-Qaeda was based. Then we went to Iraq. Instead of asking ourselves why the phenomenon of terror occurred, we were looking for locations. This is a major lesson we must learn in order not to make the same mistakes again." He said it was a huge error. As brutal as Saddam Hussein was, it was a mistake to just eliminate him. The same is true for Gaddafi and for Libya, which is now a failed state.
And by the way, he's the former head of defense intelligence. He went public saying they were ordered to back al-Qaeda consciously by Hillary and Obama.
So, again, it's mentally ill people that are running the country. And not only here, look what's going on in France. And the poor young guys are buying into the same thing. They're signing up in record numbers right now.
When it's their government that brought the jihadis in. Neil in Arizona, last caller we have time for. I'll go to others after Gerald leaves us. Quick question, Neil. Thanks for calling.
Yeah, I'd like to ask Gerald Celente a question. My blog on YouTube is Global Economic Collapse. 70% of the U.S. economy is consumer-based, floating debt economy. What happens to the U.S. if China pulls the plug, sir?
I don't think China's going to pull the plug. They need business, and they're in deep problems.
But global slowdown is pulling the plug, right?
Excuse me?
But global slowdown does slowly pull the plug, though, doesn't it?
Exactly. That's where it's all about. But again, our forecasts keep coming out. Our timing is wrong because they keep making up new stuff. You're looking at deeper negative interest rates in Europe. Negative interest rates? You borrow money, you buy bonds in Switzerland. In 10 years, you're guaranteed to get back less than...
That's Alice in Wonderland. So they've gone to Alice in Wonderland stuff. That's got to create some weird effects.
It is. There's going to be a global explosion, a bubble of $225 trillion in debt like we've never seen in our lifetime. And then there'll be a false flag or a reel that'll get our mind off it.
That's right.
And they'll take us to war.
Gosh, I hope they don't do it with the Russians. These people, as you know, are crazy enough to kill us all.
Yeah, it's not going to be the Russians. It's going to come from some other place. No, they're not going to deal with the Russians. I think the administration's smart enough not to push them too far, but they'll keep pushing.
Gerald Celente, trendsresearch.com. Folks should get your quarterly. They should sign up for your email alerts. Invaluable info. Have a great Christmas coming up. God bless you, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you, Alex.
There goes Gerald Celente, absolutely on target. We're just here ringing the alarm bells, so hopefully sanity reigns. And the generals are running around by the dozen saying this is insane. I mean, this is insane. We have crazy people running things. We'll be back. James Delingpole writes for the London Telegraph, Breitbart, you name it. See his publications everywhere. He's a columnist and novelist and writes, among other publications, The Times, The Daily Telegraph, and The Spectator. He's published several novels and 4 political books. He describes himself as being a libertarian conservative. He is the winner of the 2010 Prize for Online Journalism. JamesDelingpole.com is his website. He joins us to the bottom of the hour that I'm going to open the phones up again on world events for people. He is covering right now the craziness going on in Paris, France for the next week or so. And that is the biggest gathering of world leaders ever. It's being billed. Lord Moncton's on, tomorrow, breaking this down with us. We have some other big guests tomorrow. I'm just going to leave that at that. And they're literally $1,000 a plate caviar dinners, taxpayer paid for, jumbo jets, Israeli surveillance blimps, red carpets. And they're up there saying, we saved you from the terrorists. Now pass global government to deal with them. So they're conflating the terror attacks that they helped happen by bringing the refugees in and advertising it. The world for jihadis to come in. They're almost all Sunnis that failed to take over Syria, now evacuating to Europe, and the criminals that launched the attack. It's just unspeakable. And even mainline media admits they're trying to basically ratify the TPP without governments even having time to vote on it. So much is happening. They're also proposing an enforcement arm on speech if you deny man-made climate change. Notice it's climate change now the last few years, not global warming. And the thing is, it's so over the top what totalitarians they are. They're arresting conservative leaders in France that criticize open borders who lead in presidential polls like Marine Le Pen, while with straight faces basically declaring civil emergency. So the left has openly become flaming tyrants. The right wing worldwide, I guess, either works with them or is scared of them. James Delingpole joins us. What's going on with these people? Is it that they realize their constituents now support totalitarianism? What is the left going for? Because they really seem to be in a death orgy right now, trying to bring down the West in some bizarre temper tantrum that is discrediting them, but they don't seem to care. What's going on? Or do you think my analysis that they've gone completely insane is wrong?
No, they haven't gone insane. They were always insane. I think. I don't know whether you're familiar with the name Maurice Strong, the Canadian One World Government guy, who died a couple of days ago, and it passed almost unnoticed by the world's media. But I would argue that that man is one of the most dangerous men of the 20th century, because he was the guy who set the ball rolling with the Rio Earth Summit in 1992. That was the first big global climate summit. And you remember all the world's leaders flew over there, and they signed up to this thing called Agenda 21, which, I'm sure that some of your listeners will be familiar with. And it is basically the blueprint for one world government. All these guys who turn up to these meetings, they're essentially part of this massive United Nations apparatus. They may not all be one world government freaks, but they are caught in this system which steers the world inexorably towards one world government. You think of all the different branches of the United Nations, from the United Nations Environment Program to the World Health Organization, etc., etc. All these things use environmentalism as a way of increasing the global bureaucratic control of the United Nations and similar bodies. So that is ultimately what it's about. It's got really very little to do with saving the planet. It's certainly got nothing to do with the science. The science and the global warming movement parted company a very long time ago.
And by the way, I agree with your piercing analysis. Every generation looks back at the last generation, Stalin, Hitler, Mao, and thinks crazy-eyed megalomaniacs rubbing their hands together on power trips belong to the last generation, and then we don't recognize our new crazed tyrants until we're halfway into the wood chipper.
That's absolutely it. I think that because we've been programmed to think that that evil men must wear jackboots, or they've got scars down their faces, or they've got white furry cats on their laps, we forget that a lot of the most dangerous people in the world really want to do the right thing. I mean, I'm sure if you'd met Maurice Strong, I never did, but if you'd met him, I'm sure you'd have found him personally very charming.
No, he was a true believer. He thought they were saving the earth, but of course putting themselves in power.
Exactly. And I mean, you look at, I don't know whether you've ever seen a Nature TV documentary with David Attenborough. He does the BBC documentaries about polar bears and things. And he's a very well-loved figure, and he's a very, very nice man with a lovely, soft, whispery voice. But the problem is that some of the stuff he believes is really quite dangerous, that he believes that there are too many humans on the planet and that this is something we need to address and so on. Well, I don't think that there's any room for that Malthusianism in the planet. It was wrong in the 18th century when Thomas Malthus was first espousing it, and it's wrong now. Human beings do far more good than bad to the planet, and we are not, as the Club of Rome once put it, the cancer. You remember that phrase?
And we certainly don't want an elite group who decides who lives and who dies.
Well, amen, bro. I'm certainly with you on that one. You do not want an unelected bureaucratic elite who tend to swing left, unfortunately, anyway. I don't want these guys telling me what to do. I'd like to live my own life, thank you, free of that constraint. Well,
plus they're such hypocrites. They have the biggest carbon footprints. They live like gods, beyond kings. And then they're telling Africans you can't have air conditioning or a car. How about we're going to develop, high-tech cars and air conditioners for you? I mean, it's just such an arrogance. It's an elite club. You look, for example, at one of the biggest charitable organizations in America, one of the most powerful, and I think one of the most dangerous, the Nature Conservancy. Ted Turner, one of the richest men in America, he has bought up swathes of the American landscape and sequestered it, made sure that it can never be developed for anything. It can never be used for sport. It can never be used for commercially exploited. That's bits of America gone, which are now in the hands of this kind of unelected elite. You never voted for Ted Turner. You never said, oh, well, hang on, Ted. You never said to him, I know, Ted, I want you to put aside all that land and never allow any American to use it again. These guys are... Well, I'm sorry, I think they're evil, basically. I really do. Well, they are. You've been tracking this mega summit that they're billing is bigger than the Agenda 21 conference that Strong put on in '92. Is that hype, or is this a big power grab? This is just, look, Paris in 2015 is the same as Cancun and whenever it was, 2011, and Bali in 2040. I mean, I forget the exact years. Lima. They always choose really nice places to go on these jaunts, and the world leaders fly out in their private jets, and the entourage flies out, and they all arrive by limo, and they build up these massive carbon footprints, and it becomes almost an end in itself. The elephant in the room, the reason that there will be no really binding agreement is China. China is the world's biggest producer of carbon dioxide. I mean, its industry is massive, and the Chinese have no intention whatsoever of stopping the economic growth which the people want. I mean, the Chinese Communist Party does not want a revolution on its hands. And now enters India. They're telling India, though, you've got to make cuts, but China doesn't, and India is saying that's discriminatory. That's the whole point of this, isn't it? Picking winners and losers. Well, yeah, the Indians aren't going to buy it either. And this is the other thing. We in the West imagine that we call the shots. We don't anymore. India and China do. The developing world do. And then, so you're going to see this massive clash between I suppose the East and the West. And it's one we're not going to win because the Chinese aren't stupid. I mean, they'll play along with the green stuff to if they think they're going to get some money out of it. But behind the closed doors, they're going to carry on mining that coal and belching out that carbon dioxide and giving their people an improved standard of living. And why not? Well, that's what frustrates me about India and China is they won't put in the clean plants. Then we put in plants so clean that nothing bad comes out but carbon dioxide and water. They list it as toxic waste and then just shut our plants down, suiciding the UK steel industry, suiciding ours. This is crazy. Well, everything you say there is perfectly true, but you've got to remember that the Chinese industry is pretty much in the dark ages relative to Western industry. They haven't got the same technologies as us. They haven't got the same... But this is what you get when you have a sort of communist state.
you don't get technological leaps. You don't get entrepreneurs devising clever new methods. All the Chinese technology is either bought from the West or stolen from the West. And there's still they still have to use far more energy to produce less.
China can't even build SAM missiles that work.
No, this is what Chinese are like. So it would be naive for us to listen to the Chinese when it would be naive for us to listen to Greenpeace when Greenpeace tells us about how green China is and how keen China is to greenify its economy. China does not give a toss about being green. It'll do whatever is necessary to advance its cause.
Absolutely, and it hopes we handicap ourselves by not having energy. James Delingpole, Rice London Telegraph, you name it, joining us. We're going to come back in the next segment. He's going to tell us what else we should look for at this big global government conference. And we have the Pope saying we can buy carbon indulgences and get us out of hell. I mean, I'm not kidding. He's saying world government, world enforcement is the answer to save our souls. Ted Cruz has come out and said the overwhelming majority of criminals are Democrats. The demographics show that. We're going to cover that in the next segment. Go to your phone calls. And I'm not even a Republican. I'm a libertarian. But the Democrats are morphing into a mentally ill criminal organization. I mean, look at how the radical socialists are combining forces with radical Islamicist Sunnis to then oppress everyone in Europe. It's truly sickening. Final segment with Delingpole right now. We're breaking down the situation unfolding worldwide. James Delingpole, what else is important from your research for folks to know about this global government, Save the World Climate Summit? And then also, what do you make of the waves of migrants? How far do you think that's going to go? Have the socialists finally, in their attempt to wreck the West, jumped the shark?
That's a lot of questions there. Well, you mentioned the Pope earlier on. It's very interesting that Ban Ki-moon, the General Secretary of the United Nations, managed to co-opt the Pope into this great climate crusade. I hated that speech Obama made, but he was absolutely right when he said that there really are no political leaders in the world who are against this thing. And this has got nothing to do with their expert knowledge of the subject. It's just because they just go with the flow. It's become all-consuming.
So it's a bandwagon.
I would argue that the far more serious issues facing us in the world today, one of them would be immigration, definitely. Climate change would come way, way down on the list. In fact, I would say it comes down way down the list of most normal people. But unfortunately, we don't seem to get the say in the matter. There is this democratic deficit whereby the political class is going to railroad through this policy anyway, regardless of what we think.
I agree with you. What do you think the main motive is of Merkel and Hollande and Obama to want to bring in unlimited amounts of immigrants?
I think that it's not. They haven't even thought it through. I genuinely think they haven't thought it through. I think it's because politicians like virtue signaling. That is, they want to be seen to be nice, caring people. They want to be, and it suits the narrative that, look, we care about people. Look, here are some immigrants. We care about them. We want to give them a new life and a better future, just like the countries of Europe did in the war to people fleeing Nazi Germany. That's the kind of way they think. It's very simplistic. They don't think through the consequences. They don't think through what's happened in Sweden, in Britain, in Belgium, where you've got these ghettos of people who do not want to integrate, who want to destroy their host country.
Well, that's what it comes down to, is there's an attempt where they can wreck what was ever left of the Renaissance order. They can bring in complete tyranny, and I think we need to realize that most of these people that are grassroots mean well, but they're on a power trip through the system. But the people at the top consciously know they're taking over. I mean, I think that's overwhelmingly obvious.
Yeah, I think that the West, actually, Western civilization has got a death wish. I think we've grown soft. I think we no longer defend our values. We no longer even understand what our values are. I mean, look at the stuff that's going on at Mizzou at the moment. All this stuff that students are obsessed with about cisgender and about rape culture. These are all kind of invented kids' fantasies. They've got nothing to do with...
It's like worrying about boogeymen statistically. It's total mental illness.
It is. But these are all signs, and I think of an intellectually weak, decadent society. We've forgotten what it is that really matters, and that is the problem. And so inevitably, we're going to get exploited by much harder cultures like fundamentalist Islam,
That's it.
which know what they do stand for, and they very much do have a will to win.
That's it. We've had our culture completely removed. We've been turned into griping sissies that just fight with each other all day, and then here come in dark age cultures with swords conquering us.
Yeah, the Roman Empire didn't last forever, and it is not written that our empire. We've been through the Enlightenment. We've been through, we've had Judeo-Christian civilization. We've created we've created the best culture the world has ever seen. But I think that since the war, it's been in decline. I think people have forgotten what it is about our culture that makes it special.
I agree. It was Victor Hugo that said prosperity basically makes monsters, adversity makes men. And it's almost like going on a Mars mission. You have no gravity, so you can't walk once you get there. I think we've had it so good that we've just turned into jellyfish, and this is just a natural cycle.
I fear so. Let's hope it's not the final down wave. I hope that. I mean, there have always been periods of history where people have needed to be forcibly reminded that their civilization is worth fighting for. I mean, it happened in World War II. Britain was quite sort of...
Absolutely. We could bounce back, but only if some of us get out there and lead this cultural awakening. JamesDelingpole.com is the website. Thanks, James. Talk to you soon. Thank you. We'll be back with a ton of news, your calls, and more. I'm Alex Jones with Infowars.com. The attempt to save Western civilization continues. You see, our own military refusing to back al-Qaeda for at least 3 years. The autonomous drones will back al-Qaeda. The autonomous drones will deliver the weapons to al-Qaeda. They will commit the crimes and blame them on others. This is the end of free will, the rise of the technocracy. It's not the technology's bad, it's that it's in the hands of the few and has been designed and bent and twisted to their will. I want to go to Maya and Paul and Eli and James and Justice and others that are patiently holding. Justice is a cool name. That's Dave Mustaine's son's name. He's a big, tough guy, big guy for like I think 6'4" or something. Looks like a Viking barbarian or something. And then he's got a great daughter too, a great musician. I don't know why I'm going off into that one. I just never see that name. But Electra's really sweet as well. Say hi to those folks with Christmas Company to give them a call. But I digress. David Knight is coming up. The draft for the COP21 agreement has two options. He'll be breaking down in the fourth hour exactly what they're pushing for. One will have a rigid enforcement mechanism that will require global governance and taxation. This is the option that Obama's pushing. Both options have massive transfer of wealth and technology via large green companies. Those are the fronts where they give money to themselves, like the ones unveiled by Bill Gates yesterday. We'll look at the history of Obama's crony capitalism and the last $3 billion failure that went bust on the eve of the climate summit. We'll also look at geoengineering as making headlines with proposals for a fake volcano. They're just getting you ready to unveil what they're already doing with the jet aircraft. That's all coming up. I want to get to Ted Cruz says overwhelming majority of violent criminals are Democrats. Well, that's actually true. I mean, if you look at the statistics, the voting records, the donation records, the claim by Obama, they're building homeland security for gun owners, conservatives, libertarians, and Christians, is like saying they're building homeland security because the Amish are doing bad stuff. Amish have probably the lowest crime rate in this country. You can look it up. Everybody knows veterans, conservatives, libertarians have super low crime rates. You know, we're the folks that can make our own money, have our own business, want to be left alone. You know, those people wouldn't be caught dead in a government job. And look, I'm not knocking people that got government jobs. There are a lot of good people in there and a lot of stuff that goes on. But it's too big. It's out of control. And 100 million people on some form of welfare. That's a third of the country. This is about control. And he's absolutely right. And this is the rhetoric right back at these people. They're howling mobs of criminals. I mean, look at their main constituents are 40 million illegal aliens from all over the world. That they're actually butthurt and think everything should be free, that there's not enough free, running around complaining. when we're the most open. If America was a prostitute, we're seeing about 5,000 Johns a day for free. I mean, I hate to use a gross analogy, but I mean, we are the biggest whore the world ever saw. We're being whored out. We're a joke, drug around by our hair by the government that's a pimp that puts cigarettes out on us. And, man, I don't like this pimp. And I don't like being pimped out. I mean, I know they sell body parts here in Austin. I know as a taxpayer, the only county in Texas where they take people's money to pay for abortions, it's abusive. I feel like I'm in peril of my soul for just even being involved in it. And it's not some weird guilt trip, man. I know when something's bad. I know. I feel it. I get a feeling inside. I just can't stand it. I'm going to go to your phone calls. I'm not going to belabor this. I've just decided to extend shipping until December 18th. I'm running it right through to the last day you can order products in the United States and get them before Christmas. And I'm not going to belabor this, but I think it's one of the coolest things ever. InfoWars Premium Power Pack Supercharger. It's private labeled, one of the most popular, lowest cost units with jumper cables. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different power outlets, different plug-in outlets, super high-powered LED flashlight torch, and a bunch of other functions. It's $119. The same thing sells for $150, $160. Competitors that aren't as good sell for that same price. Not even Amazon has this for $119. I did it because I bought a dragon horde of them, had them made, and bought just a ton of them, and then I private labeled them to get around rules on prices because I want to sell something at the lowest price and competitively sell even more. I mean, I'm a free marketer. I'm a capitalist, not a crony capitalist. And so you get a great deal on something every car needs, every house needs. I mean, this is the third the size of a briefcase now. I mean, a small briefcase is like 3 of these. I mean, this is crazy that this, and I've used this. This has boosted my car when I left the lights on. This has, I mean, I just couldn't believe it when it actually started the car. I mean, it's so little, and it does all this, charges up all your other devices. You should just always have this charged and ready. So when a cell phone's dead when you're camping or at work or wherever, this thing is just amazing. InfoWarsStore.com. And we've got a bunch of other specials, some of them ended today, because I just can't run giant specials all the time. But we've got a bunch that are still going right now at InfoWarsStore.com or InfoWarsLife.com. 25% off Super Male, Super Female Vitality ends tonight. $9.95, 2-ounce colloidal silver. That ends in a couple days. 30% off X2 ends in a couple days. 30% off Brain Force ends in a couple days. 33% off DNA Force. All ends by the end of this week. 30% off Secret 12 Vitamin B12. 20% off InfoWars Select Sortable Foods and free shipping. You want big deals? This is just Black Friday right through to Christmas. InfoWarsLife.com, InfoWarsStore.com, or 888-253-3139. You know, I said I'd go to the Ted Cruz thing first, but let's go to this first. There's a story up on InfoWars.com. Video. New York liberals support bringing in refugees, then refuse to house any refugees. Paul Joseph Watson. Virtue signaling leftists are actually less charitable than conservatives. You know, they're the opposite of collectivists. They say they're collectivists because they think they're getting somebody else's stuff. That's called being a thief. If you're a real collectivist, you're an individual, but then you collectively fight for freedom because you get really threatened by stuff like this. You don't just virtue signal, oh, I'm nice, bring in anybody who wants to and everything's free. You explain that's stealing, that's not good. You explain it's a fraud. But they virtue signal. And they found that particularly white liberals are 6 times more likely to rob, to steal, and to not give money in charity. They have British and Canadian studies. And I don't want to single out whites, but let me tell you, they are a sickening, nasty group of people. They're just sick, sneaky followers. And they'll sit around, you know, saying support stuff on Facebook all day to look good in front of people, not to actually give money. Anybody who really gives money to charity knows you don't want to talk about it. The real enjoyment is nobody knows. The real enjoyment is you really help people. It almost ruins it if people know. Hell, I learned that in high school. You know, don't kiss and tell. All of a sudden the girls go, you mean you don't tell? Oh, no, baby, I don't tell. Never tell. Never talk. I'm being bad. I apologize. I'm not being very good right now. I am pretty honest, though. I like God's creations. InfoWarsStore.com. If you, again, want to get the nutraceuticals, InfoWars.com if you want to read these articles. But here is the video. New York liberals are outraged at more than half of the nation's governors saying no to an Obama administration plan to accept 100,000 refugees, but when asked if they would personally house a refugee, almost all refused to. Now, I'm not mad at my reporters. They do a great job. But I've been saying I want my reporters to go out and do this, and I'm going to go out to people's houses and say, do you support Obama wanting governors to take the refugees for Obama? And they're going to say, of course I do. And I'm going to say, okay, well, I'm going to move 5 refugees into your house. They're going to say, get off my porch. Well, it's been done, folks, and here it is.
Half of the governors in our United States said that they don't want to take in Syrian refugees. Have you heard that?
Yeah.
What do you think about it?
I think they all ought to go read the Statue of Liberty.
Do you think we should take refugees into this country?
Of course. Everyone in this country has been a refugee.
Email address. We're collecting email addresses to sign people up for taking them into their homes. You got a fat pad or what?
No. I'm a street performer.
Okay, but you still got, you know...
Back it up 10 seconds, please. That's not true. Not everybody in the country is a refugee, but a lot of us were, okay? And when you got here, you didn't get anything free. And you had to sit at the Statue of Liberty for 3 months to make sure you didn't have TB or Black Plague. But by the way, the Statue of Liberty was originally a Muslim peasant woman. Egypt had bought it wearing the hijab. I'm not kidding, a hood over her head. This is so proper. And that's why people always said it's a man in drag. It is a woman. I mean, I knew this, and I'd forgotten it, and here I was reading it. It's an Infowars.com story. Statue of Liberty was originally a Muslim peasant woman. The French concept morphed from a gigantic female fella. The Smithsonian has confirmed Lady Liberty was originally designed as a Muslim peasant woman. The colossal neoclassic sculpture was indeed to stand at the northern terminus of the Suez Canal in Egypt, but after it was decided that a lighthouse would be placed there instead, the French designer reproposed the statue to New York Harbor. And so there you go. Let's scroll down and show what it should have been. I think it should be a woman in a headdress with a suicide bomb on her. Maybe. I'm sorry. It's just so ridiculous. They're not bringing any Shiites or any Christians in that have actually been killed. They're bringing Sunnis in that invaded Syria and got their butts kicked. I mean, what a joke. And yes, I judge cultures. I don't think a woman having to cover her face is good. And I'm certainly not going to be bullied into my daughters wearing it. I know I'm an oppressor of women, but that's just how it is. Now, let's go ahead and go back to the idiots in New York. Here it is.
To sign people up for taking them into their homes. You got a fat pad or what?
No. I'm a street performer.
Okay, but you still got, you know, running water.
I got it.
So you think that we should take the refugees?
Absolutely.
All right.
Absolutely.
Give us your email address. You're signing up to house some refugees. Because that's what we need.
I'm not going to be able to do that.
Would you be willing to take one into your own home?
Well, a studio apartment, I don't know.
A studio apartment is better than, you know,
these guys
another winter in the desert.
These are just collaborators.
I don't know if I would do that.
Do you have a room at your house?
Yeah.
All right, you're in. Just write down.
Yeah.
So where should we put them?
Don't know.
Don't know.
Sorry, I can't get there.
Sorry, I can't
be
get
scared?
there. Let me signal I'm weak.
What if they're a Muslim? Would you be scared?
No problem.
No problem.
Some friends.
Law's not a conservative.
Everyone wants you to be very scared of them. I don't understand why you're not scared.
Why should I be scared?
Why should I be
That's
scared?
what they tell you to be.
I can tell
Scary
this is
world.
bull.
Indeed.
So you don't think we should take refugees in? You think we should go there and kick ISIS's ass?
I think we should go there and, get the refugees' homes back. That's what we should do.
Right? Wouldn't that be nice?
I bet that guy's actually a Shiite Muslim.
Why can't they just go home?
All right, folks, let's continue now. Let's go to Ted Cruz. Oh, and I'm going to go to your calls after that. Overwhelming majority of violent criminals are Democrats. Mikhail Thalen, Infowars.com. And this is speaking on the Hugh Hewitt show. and he's actually telling the truth. This sounds outrageous, but it's true. The vast majority of criminals are Democrats, including the 40 million illegal aliens that came here illegally. And again, I'm not against them all individually, but I can't go to their countries, China, Mexico, you name it, and just get everything free. It's pure bull. Let's go ahead and go to this clip.
And before I switch to the 2016 race, I have been doing pro-life events for 25 years. I've probably done more than 100 of them. I have never met, not once, a single pro-life activist who is in favor of violence of any sort. Have you, Senator Cruz?
I have not. And I would note that this whole episode has really displayed the ugly underbelly of the media. Every time you have some sort of violent crime or mass killing, you can almost see the media salivating, hoping desperately that the murderer happens to be a Republican so they can use it to try to paint their political enemies. Now, listen, here's the simple and undeniable fact. The overwhelming majority of violent criminals are Democrats. The media doesn't report that. What they report, and there's a reason why the Democrats for years have been viewed as soft on crime, because they go in and they appoint to the bench judges who release violent criminals. They go in and they do what Barack Obama tried to do, which is appoint a lawyer who voluntarily represents.
No, that's right. That's enough. You can see the whole clip or hear the whole clip at Infowars.com, but it's a fact. They cater to criminality. They cater to overthrow. They cater to destabilization. And the Republicans are horrible as well, but just nothing like the Democrats. And the Democrats have really, really gone to seed here. I'm going to go to Maya. I'm going to go to Eli. I'm going to go to Paul, Justin, James. I'm going to get to all of you before I hand the baton to David Knight in the fourth hour today. Let's go ahead and talk to Maya in Kansas. Thanks for holding.
Yeah, hi, thanks. Yeah, I totally agree. Not only is it known that most of the crime, whether it's on a political level or just individual, it's usually coming from a liberal space. I would also say that a lot of what's happening here is coming from a high number of intellectuals, okay, who've been taught in liberal colleges how to irritate, confuse, and create all types of chaos.
Oh, yeah, they play mind games and they mess with their students. They totally jack their brains.
It's called shock and awe. That's all it is, plain shock and awe. They drop a bomb over here and we all look this way, and then while they're doing that, they drop a bomb someplace else. It's all part of the desensitization. And what's really scary about it is that those of us who work for a living, we're all running and scrambling and trying to make sure we've got cover, that we've got what we need in order to survive all of this. And, what do we do now? I mean, with everything.
Well, you're right. When society unravels, which it's starting to worldwide, these spoiled, rotten brats are going to get chewed up by all of us that actually know how to take care of ourselves. I mean, they are absolutely hopeless.
Yeah, what do we do now, though? I mean, all of a sudden, now we know what's going on with the global situation. Do we continue putting money into 401ks?
No, I hear you, and that's what'll cause it really to go down, is when the good, hardworking people of every race, color, creed, and religion figure out it's all a scam and stop producing. You have the fall of the Soviet Union. You have the fall of the system. That's what's coming. And the real crime is us not slaving. All right, going to more of your phone calls. Those I don't get to can talk to David Knight coming up at the fourth hour. He's got a lot of breaking news. Up first is... Which caller did you say was first, John? James in Ohio. Thanks for holding. You're on the air.
Alex, good to talk to you. My question was, has World War II already started, or World War III to be exact, with the 9/11 thing that happened that took us to war in the Middle East? And it's happening, my brother. It's happening.
You're right. It is a world war incrementally, country by country, by proxy war, by economic war. The Pentagon called the Cold War World War III. So they are calling this the beginnings of World War IV. But the general public doesn't use that terminology, so I kind of use both terms. But the world is escalating into unparalleled conflict. Top generals are saying that. I mean, people need to know we're not fear-mongering here. We're really telling you what's going on. Then Obama makes statements last year about the world's never been more stable since he got in. And then he's involved with Hillary in massive criminal destabilization. It's just unprecedented to have the Legion of Doom running America.
Alex, I'm sorry to interrupt you, and I agree with you. I have a couple people listening into your radio station that I've tuned up to.
Thank you.
But I'm 25 years old. I started my business when I was 21, and I've been pretty much successful, and I want to actually plug one of your products, if that's okay with you.
I didn't know you were going to do that, but sure, you're welcome. Go ahead.
Sure. Brain Force is excellent. It's whatever you and Dr. Group are doing, it's worked.
Which product is that?
Brain Force.
Oh, yeah. No. Brain Force, if you read, each ingredient is known to naturally boost cognitive activity, brain activity, energy. One of the things in it is prescription in Europe. I mean, it's the real deal. It's one of the fanciest brain pills out there for a low price.
The real deal. You are the real deal. And the best thing about it is most of your listeners, I mean, even if they admit it or not, they are very, very successful business owners. And they don't want to say they're listening to conspiracy radio. You're not a conspiracy, Alex. You're the truth.
Well, God bless you, and I appreciate your call, brother. I'm going to jump right there to jam in one more before we go to break, but thank you. I'm sorry we're short on time. Look, just as a good business person, I'd want to sell products that work really good. But I want to do it because I'm moral to begin with. They call me a soft chump. No, that's the hard, dumb world. Thinks it's good to screw people. No, it's not. Plus, I don't want to be screwed over. Do unto others as I'm doing to you. Yes, Brain Force is one of the highest quality brain pills out there for one of the lowest prices. It's $20 right now, discounted. I mean, it's really good. Cost us a lot to make each bottle. Let's go ahead and jam in another call here. Tim in Kentucky, you're on the air.
Actually,
Tim in Wyoming. I'm sorry, I read it wrong. Go ahead.
Okay, thanks, Alex. Actually, I wanted to comment. You're constantly going on about the. I'm not okay. I actually enjoy your show. I love it. But,
thank you.
You constantly sorry. You constantly talk about the dichotomy of the Republican and Democratic parties. The way I look at it is they're both the parties are controlled from the inside by the same people. They're two different plants, two different looking plants from the same seed. The way I look at it.
I agree. The Republican leadership is bad. They at least say some good stuff. But we've got a chance to take over the Republican Party. That's their main defense. They're worried about that because they can be taken over. The Democrats are just accelerating into pure evil. Go ahead.
All right. I understand I understand what you're saying. I mean, Republicans say good things, Democrats say good things sometimes too. I'm not either one of those. I'm an independent. I mean, I'd like to consider myself a libertarian. There's some things about libertarianism I don't actually agree with.
Sure, I'm just trying to get them out of power because I don't want a one-party state. And I mean, I totally get what you're saying. I apologize, I'm out of time. Callers, stay there. In fact, Tim, come back. I know David Knight's going to talk to all of you. Paul, Justice, Chad, Eli, all of you. Fourth hour coming up. Nightly News tonight, 7 o'clock. God bless you.
Visit GCNlive.com today.
Big guest tomorrow. Big guest.
Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show on this fourth hour, Tuesday, December the 1st, 2015. I'm David Knight, your host. I'm going to go back to your calls in just one moment. I want to give people a quick overview of what we're going to be talking about. Of course, there's been a lot of articles talking about the lavish lifestyles, the champagne dreams and caviar wishes. Was that how Archibald, what was that guy's name? I can't even remember. That phrase just came up. Anyway, the way they're spending massive amounts of money on their dinners, on their plane flights, using massive amounts of energy as they complain to us about heating our homes and cooking on our barbecue grills. What you need to understand about this is what I think we ought to start calling crony climatism. We all know what crony capitalism is. And what crony climatism is doing is creating these phony green companies, one of which went belly up the very day before this conference began. And we're not talking about that enough. We need to talk about what happened with that one particular company. $3 billion is sucked out of taxpayers just in the United States. And you need to understand that in addition to global governance that they're trying to establish, creating an enforcement mechanism, and of course, there's two options on the plate here, as we've seen from the early draft releases of this climate summit that's going on in Paris. The two options are that they, just kind of nudge people along. They set up their goals and nudge people along, and then they transfer technology to the developing countries that's going to be nice and green and carbon-free. The other approach is that they're going to have teeth in this that are enforceable, and that is what Obama is coming out and talking about today. He's saying, we want to have an enforcement mechanism. Well, if you're going to have an enforcement mechanism, you're going to have an international bureaucracy, an international governance that is going to go along with that international taxation to make this all work, because that's the way they're going to operate this. But either way, in either of these options, there's a massive transfer of technology and money that goes with it, because it's all got to be paid for by somebody. That's all going to be a massive transfer of technology and money from developed countries to undeveloped countries. So we're going to have our industry shut down. We're going to have our income capabilities shut down. Meanwhile, our wealth is simultaneously going to be transferred to other countries at the same time. And it's all going to be filtered through the sticky hands of the same group of crony capitalists that are always there. The Al Gores, the Bill Gates. Bill Gates has a proposal where he's putting himself at the center of a venture capital organization. He's going to put some seed money in it. He's worked up with 20 different countries how he's going to do this. Understand this is all flowing to these people and know how this is going to work. We've seen this in microcosm in the United States with Obama's green failures. There were over 36 of them quite a while ago, and now we've just had one of the biggest ones fall the day before this nonsense begins. And understand, again, as I repeated, there are two options on the table. One of them is going to have a real hard enforcement mechanism associated with it, but both of them are going to be transferring your money, your freedoms, your income, your wealth. They're going to be transferring that to other countries. India is not happy about it. They're calling it carbon imperialism. And say, well, we're going to have our future decided by this international body. And yeah, that's right. India and Russia are the only two countries complaining about that. Now, India's complaining about it, saying, we don't think we're getting a fair deal. We're not getting enough money. Well, I don't think we're getting a fair deal either, okay? Because this isn't being done in the interest of the United States taxpayer, the United States citizen. This is being done in the interest of the crony capitalists who are working with Obama. That's what they're doing with this. So it really is a kind of crony climatism that they're pushing on this. Let's go quickly to some of your calls. Let's go to Tim in Wyoming. Alex was talking to you. You ran out of time. Go ahead and finish up.
Oh, hi, David. Thanks for taking my call. Now, I was talking about the Republicans and Democrats basically growing from the same seed. Sometimes a plant will crawl along the ground, and sometimes it'll wrap around something, and sometimes it'll just grow into a shrub. But it'll still be the same plant.
Hang on, Tim. I'm going to have to let you finish that on the other side of the break. Sorry to go to you so late. We're going to be right back with your calls, and we're going to break down the failures of that and tell you about the three judges who are going to decide the future of the internet. Welcome back to the fourth hour of this Alex Jones radio show broadcast on this Tuesday, December the 1st, 2015. I'm David Knight, your host. We're going to go right back to the callers here in just a moment. Before I do, I want to let you know about some of the specials we have at the InfoWars store. We got a free ebook. All you have to do is sign up to the newsletter. The newsletter, if you sign up to it, you'll get a lot of free content, including other specials that are coming out. You'll be the first ones to know. But right now we have a free ebook, Keys to Survival. We've assembled the collective knowledge of experts in the field of finance, survival, health, and more, bringing you exclusive information on how to prepare for potential disasters. Again, you can get that free ebook. It's just signing up to the newsletter. We also have a new product, InfoWars Premium Power Pack, just recently announced. It is selling at a price of $119.95, so just under $120. Others charge $150 or more for equivalent functionality. This is a very small power pack that you can use to power your phones, to power all kinds of devices for a very long time. It's so much power, you can jump your car with it, and it comes with jumper cables included in the bug-out bag. And one last thing, we've got a special that ends tonight, 25% off Super Male and Super Female Vitality. Again, all of this is available with free shipping. You can find that all at InfoWarsStore.com. Let's go back to Tim in Wyoming. Tim, we've tried to give you a couple of different, we've run out of time two times before this when you tried to make your point. Go ahead.
Oh, thank you. Now, the comment I was making was basically that when we see the two parties that look somewhat different from one another, we just have to realize, okay, ivy will grow along the ground. Sometimes it'll wrap around a fence. sometimes it'll go all the way up a tree and strangle the tree, but it's the same plant. Basically, that's what I think of the two parties as, or two supposed two parties, which are really one party just joined at the hip, if you will, or two halves of one brain.
Yeah, we have a single party in Washington. We really do. And the reality of it is that you can look, and at the bottom, you can see people who are not involved in the leadership of the two parties. You can see them surfacing occasionally. You know, the Ron Pauls, the Dennis Kucinich. We just had a Democrat representative, a female from Hawaii. I can't recall her name. And she was pushing back against this war on Syria. And so, you know, we see what you're doing here. We understand that you're running this. We understand you're funding it. And we want you to stop this. I mean, she's speaking truth to power. That will happen in Congress occasionally. We've got Walter Jones, a good example, on the Republican side. But for the most part, when you look at the people at the top, they're all working towards the same agenda. And we can see this whether it comes to climate change and these other aspects, or whether it comes to the Trans-Pacific, Transatlantic partnerships. They're all trying to concentrate power into Washington. They really are on the same page. Even when they talk about something where there's a real fundamental difference to their constituents, something like abortion, nothing ever changes. It doesn't change when you elect Republicans or Democrats. It just keeps on plugging away, doing what it was doing before about abortion. So even on some of those issues where there is a distinction between them, it just keeps going. But we've seen over and over again. We elected a Republican majority just recently. What did we see? We saw that we got the same open borders that people were concerned about. We saw crony capitalism, nothing done about that. The Tea Party was upset about the bailouts. And what is going on with this climate conference that's in Paris? As I pointed out in the last segment, it is nothing but crony capitalism. They're going to fund a massive transfer of wealth and technology to developing countries, and it's all going to be funneled through these preferred individuals like Bill Gates, like George Soros, like we've seen in the past. That's precisely what's going to happen. And we've seen them failing left and right in the U.S. They can't even get started unless they get massive subsidies from the government, and it doesn't go anywhere. So, yeah, there is a single party. And the reason why we see that single party, of course, Tim, is because they're both being funded and supported by the same crony capitalists at the top who want a global governance. That's precisely what this is all about. The same people who negotiate these trade deals, these so-called trade deals, they do it in secret, and they won't let the elected representatives see it at all. And we didn't see the agreement until after a month after it was passed. And then they give us this massive agreement. As we pointed out many times, it was, I think it was 4 times the collected works of J.R.R. Tolkien, 4 times the size of Shakespeare. I think it was 3 or 4 times the size of the King James Bible. It's a massive legal document. You can't pour through that thing in the amount of time they're going to have to vote on it. I think it's going to come up for a quick vote during the holiday season when nobody's looking. They're going to ram this thing through just like they do other legislation of its type, things like the Federal Reserve Act that they did a little over 100 years ago, did that the same way. So that's what we're going to see. It's these people who are truly running the government. And if you have any question about it, then you have to ask yourself, how could they gag and bind the hands and the mouths of our congressional representatives about this, telling them they could take a peek at it, but they couldn't talk about it. The only one who had the courage to do that was Senator Sessions, and good for him, and nobody listened to him, quite frankly, unfortunately. Thank you, Tim. Let's go to someone who's on the phone from Africa, Patriot in Africa. Go ahead.
Hey, David. Yeah, calling in from Zambia here, and my country has up to 14-hour power cuts daily. So globalization is really giving us a nice little treat here. And you're mentioning Bill Gates before, and he's always in the media every couple of months shooting his mouth off about how he's afraid of a plague, or when we know that they have bioweapons, which they just can't wait to release on us. And just want to get your thoughts on that.
Yes, yes. Well, you know, when we saw the outbreak of Ebola, that happened around Sierra Leone. The Sierra Leone government believed that and shut it down and told the people to leave. It was the Tuskegee Institute that was there in Sierra Leone. They said, you either let this out by careless handling or you deliberately did this as an experiment. That's where it started. We had John Rappaport talked about that when it happened. At the same time, they said, oh, no, you know, we're professionals. We would never let this thing slip out. What did we see? A few months later, we saw at the National Primate Center here in America, in Louisiana, right there with Tulane University running that again. Same university, Same people who were involved in the Tuskegee experiments, withholding treatment from black people who had syphilis, letting that go for decades, showing absolutely no regard whatsoever, no more regard for human life than we saw in the Nazi concentration camps from Joseph Mengele. That same university, Tulane, which is running the National Primate Center, had brought in a deadly virus. They were using it as a gain-of-function experiment, as select agents. Doesn't that say something when the Center for Disease Control talks about these deadly viruses that are not indigenous to our country? They talk about them as select agents, and they bring them in for gain-of-function experiments. What they're doing is they're making them more deadly. Once you contract it, you have a higher chance of dying, and they make it more easily transmissible. So they're doing these experiments, and this escaped from a biosafety level 3 lab and got into the wild. And this particular bacteria is Burkholderia pseudomallei. This lives in the soil. It spreads in the soil. So they've done that to our country here as well, Patriot, in Africa, that we've seen that same sort of thing. And we know what they're doing. You're talking about, did you say 14 power brownouts that you're having a day?
But yeah, 14 hours daily.
Wow, that's amazing. 14 hours daily.
Yeah.
Wow, and see, that's the whole issue. They're telling us that this is all being done out of compassion for the poor. I'm going to have someone on tomorrow who is going to take a very different tack than the Pope has taken. The Pope says, well, we have a moral case that we need to essentially shut down power, that we need to transfer technology and material to the developing countries. And, of course, you know, you're there in Africa. I'm sure you know that once we say we're going to transfer technology to help you out, to put solar panels there so that you can get clean energy, you know that money is not really going to go to the people of Africa, right? You know that. It's going to go into the pockets of Bill Gates.
Government.
Yeah, and the government, the corrupt government officials that are there, the corrupt corporations that are in alliance with them. So it's really not going to help the people. And we're going to talk to someone tomorrow who's going to say, you know, really the moral case is that we need to help people. We need to help them build their economies. And we don't have to make a choice between power that is readily available and cheap and power that is dirty. You know, that's not the you know, we don't have to have a polluting industry in order to have industry. That's the false dichotomy that they're offering you. We have ways to make coal burn very cleanly. But, of course, you know, we can't talk about that. We can't talk about recapturing that. And so what they're trying to do is they're imposing austerity and starvation on Africa, but they're also going to be doing it to the first world nations because they're going to be taking away our wealth, our income capability, our production capability in the name of helping other people, but it isn't going to go to the other people. It's going to go to the people in between. It's going to go to the crony capitalists. It's going to go to the government officials. Was there anything else you'd like to say, Patriot, in Africa?
No, I agree with all of that. UN Agenda 21 is just horrible.
Yes, and this whole thing is a UN agenda, and you can see that. Thank you so much for talking to us. You can see that in the logo, and I sent a logo to you guys. If we take a look at the COP21 logo, you look at it, it looks kind of like a copyright symbol to me when I first saw it. And it looked like it's all done in blue, the UN blue. There it is on the screen for those of you watching. Of course, you can see the UN laurel leaves around the outside. So we know it's a UN thing. We know that's the clue from those laurel leaves as well as the color. And then they've got the CC there. So is that, are they copywriting technology there for us? So other people point out the similarity to the Comedy Channel. Unfortunately, you know, it basically looks just like that, except that they reversed the outside C, and then they put Comedy Central. They put the other one upside down. I wish it was a joke. You know, the stuff that they're telling us that we hear from Prince Charles and others telling us that terrorism is directly caused by this. Prince Charles actually was saying that the conflict in Syria began as a drought in Syria. No, it didn't. It began with the United States and Britain and other NATO countries arming the rebels that they brought in to overthrow the Syrian government. Stay with us. We'll be right back with your calls. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Radio Show. I'm David Knight, your host. We're going to go to Justice in Canada in just a moment. We'll talk about the UN court that they're setting up. And, of course, that is something that's been proposed by John Schellenhuber. He's the German climatologist, climate scientist. And I use the term scientist loosely because, you know what? Science is about opening and questioning the data. It's about skepticism fundamentally. And I don't like to see this argument from authority. I talked about that last night. We've seen this science presented to us, and we're told that we have to accept it because the vast majority of scientists have accepted this. The vast majority of scientists are just listening to other scientists and saying, yeah, that sounds plausible to me. We've had a lot of scientists who, once they look into the data, have said this isn't true. As a matter of fact, Mark Morano of Climate, Climate Depot. Mark Morano of Climate Depot has got a documentary that he's putting out based on the scientists who have gone in and looked at the data, looked at the models, seen that it doesn't predict this type of climate activity, and reversed their position. He's got a documentary he's going to be premiering in Paris in the middle of all this nonsense that's going on there. So, yeah, science is never settled. That's the nature of science. It should always be open to questioning. And yet we see repeatedly that they will hide the raw data from us. They don't want us to see the raw data. I was part of a group that was trying to get data from the emails. It's part of the ClimateGate emails that were going back and forth between England and some that were on the American side. And we have this professor, the guy who created the hockey stick, Michael Mann, that Al Gore loves so much. He had all of these emails that he had done on work time, working for the University of Virginia. It was part of what he was doing. The taxpayers were paying for him for this research, and they absolutely refused to show their raw data, to let anybody else draw their own conclusions from the data, to see where they collected the data, how they collected the data. Was there a bias in the way they were collecting the data? Was there a bias in the way that they summarized it? They went to court to fight that. They fought the attorney general there in Virginia, and they said, no, this is proprietary information. And it's like, no, you've already published your findings, and your findings are being used to establish public policy. You can't hide behind that anymore. And this is something that you did while the taxpayers were paying you. It should be out in the open. And if you're a real scientist, you don't have a problem. You can stand up to the scrutiny of other people. You invite peer review instead of trying to censor peer review. So we've seen that happening for a long time. But of course, what is pushing all of this? We have to have a means to establish global governance. We have to have some kind of a global crisis in order to have government come in and save us from that global crisis. And the aspects of a global government that they need, of course, are some kind of regulations, a international court system, some kind of international planetary court, which has been proposed by Schellenhuber, who is an advisor to the Pope, to Prince Charles, to others on the climate issues and their groups. They have to have some kind of a climate court. They have to have some kind of an enforcement mechanism. They have to have some kind of funding, a taxation system. And then, of course, they're going to have a military or a police force to enforce this as well. That's where this is all headed. This is what this is the basis of. I would say to the people who believe in man-made global warming, I would say to those people, look at the way they're shutting your free speech down in Paris. I mean, they've come after the people who want the government to do even more, think the government is not doing enough. And I would say, look at the foolishness of trusting the government to solve this problem. Because that's the socialist, communist mindset that these people are coming from. Look at how these people are dining at these restaurants, where they get a $380 minimum per plate cost, how they're living this lavish lifestyle. I guess when Obama was there, they asked him what he was going to order, and he said, well, I'm going to leave that up to the French president. He didn't want to make a mistake ordering something. He didn't want to have a pâté faux pas, I guess. But, it really should have been a faux pas for these guys to live this kind of lavish luxury, to tell people in the streets, we don't want to hear your point of view, shut up. We're going to keep the people in the conference 100% safe. We're going to guarantee 100% security for those attending the conference. But the people on the outside, we can't guarantee your safety. That's essentially it. They're not going to guarantee anything for you. This is all for them. This is all for the elite. This is all for the ones who are the puppets of the globalist elites, the ones who are going to get their sticky fingers on all this money that is going to be transferred at the point of a gun from the industrialized countries to the undeveloped countries. It's not going to help anybody in those other countries any more than our involvement in Syria is helping the people there. When we come back, I'm going to go back to your calls. We'll go to Justice in Canada first. I know you've been hanging on for a long time. We want to talk about this UN Supreme Court, because that's really one of the key things that they want to set up, along with the taxation, along with the bureaucracy. That's what you have to have when you got a global government. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight, and I want to go right away to our caller, Justice in Canada. You've been holding for a very long time. I apologize, but thank you for holding. You want to talk about the UN Universal Supreme Court. Go ahead.
Yes, hello. Hi, Mr. Knight. I appreciate finally being able to speak on your show, and I hope that one day I'll be able to speak with Mr. Alex Jones as well. I'm the newly appointed Chief Justice of the Universal Supreme Court here in the Chilcotin, in the Chilcotin Territory in the heart of British Columbia. I'm trying to get to you some good news in the whole mess that you guys are fighting against. And I do commend you and Alex Jones and everybody on your show for all that you've done over the years. We've been following you since 9/11, and I do applaud everything that you guys have tried to do. And I think you guys have done a tremendous job. And we need to keep up the fight. And certainly, maybe we can partner together with what we're doing up here in Canada.
Well, tell me what the Universal Supreme Court is, because when I looked at that, I thought we were talking about the UN Planetary Council that Shellen Huber and others have talked about in order to enforce their climate regulations on us. What is the Universal Supreme Court?
State that I believe that the climate court that they are trying to propose is in response to the Universal Supreme Court, and I'll explain a little bit more why. And I hope that maybe you could sometime get me on a show where I could expand on these ideas more fully, because I'm just going to touch on them really briefly and really quickly. The Universal Supreme Court of the Chilcotin, that's the USCT, has been created by the Aboriginal people here in the sovereign territory of the Chilcotin. The Supreme Court of Canada last year in 2014 had come out and admitted that the Chilcotin people have been a sovereign nation and have never signed a treaty with Canada, and therefore the territory here has always been sovereign. And of course, we haven't been treated as sovereign, but the people here are trying to further their sovereignty, and we have been greatly opposed in the process. So we are the world's best-kept secret right now, and for good cause, because those people who are out there trying to pull the strings in a fraudulent manner, hurting a lot of citizens of this world, are watching what we're doing here, and they know that we are anti everything that they are doing.
Well, let me ask you a question, since you're talking about a court system. What do you think about jury nullification and the government court systems that we have right now? I know we have a long tradition of that, going back to English common law, and we both share that tradition in Canada and the United States, where juries had the ultimate say-so, where they could judge the laws and not just the facts of the cases, but we are routinely lied to and intimidated by judges, attorneys who try to appeal to this, get into a lot of trouble with the bar. So that's the sad case that we have right now. I think that's one of the key tools of power that are not being used by the American people right now, and that's their power as a jury. Just one person out of 12, an 8% solution, could shut down tyranny at the federal, the state, or the local level by saying we're not going to convict our fellow citizens. And we've seen this kind of thing happen during alcohol prohibition. We've seen it to some degree during drug prohibition. Do you have anything like that? What do you think about jury nullification in Canada? Is there any movement in Canada to establish that?
Well, I do have a lot of thoughts on that topic, but right now I think it's more important that I tell you a little bit more about what we can do for you in the bigger picture. For example, if you go on our website, it's the universalsupremecourt.org, and I'll say that again, universalsupremecourt.org. You will find there our laws, our Constitution of the Chilcotin Nation, and the Universal Supreme Court Act. It says
well, I'm going to kind of leave it at that. You got the website out there. I'll let people investigate that. We don't really have time to go into depth on it, and it's going to be a hard thing to do on the radio. But I appreciate you hanging on and letting us know about that, and people can go to that website and check that out. And I'm going to go to some of the other callers that are on here. But before I do, I want to lay out some of the issues that I think are really behind this crony climatism that we've got going on. It really is Wall Street greenwashing. And the people who support this on the left, and understand, they always come up with a way to sell global governance to you that's going to fit into your paradigm. Excuse me, I had to cough, struggling with a cough here. They're going to sell it to you if you're on the left. They know that you care about global warming. You've been you've bought into that, or that's my point of view. I don't believe it at all. But nevertheless, the people on the left care about that. So they will say this is a global problem. We need to solve this with global governance. On the right, they want to bring in what they think is free trade. And of course, we know these trade agreements are nothing at all like free trade. People on the left, many of them understand that. So you need to understand that this is not about helping the environment. This is about corporate greenwashing for the Wall Street people. Today, we've got a story from Reuters. After the leaders' rhetoric, climate negotiators start to work on a deal. They say the biggest obstacle is money. This is all about money, folks. How to come up with the billions of dollars developing nations need to shift from fossil fuels and adapt to the impacts of their problem, climate change, global warming. They don't want to call it that anymore, of course. They say it's a lack of commitment. This is a Chinese delegate says, unfortunately, there's a lack of commitment by the rich countries to make deep cuts and to help developing nations with new finance to tackle global warming. In other words, cut your standard of living, cut your production, cut everything, cut your income, and then transfer your wealth to us, okay? But it's not even to the poor people who need it. It's going to go to the intermediaries. They point out the mood has also been brightened by major spending announcements, including a plan by India and France to mobilize $1 trillion for solar power for some of the world's poorest people, and private sector initiative led by Microsoft co-founder Bill Gates to mobilize billions of dollars for new energy research and development. Understand, he's going to put himself at the epicenter of this new venture capital fund. He's going to get first pass at these different things that come out, and he's going to make himself even richer. They say Republicans have signaled that they're going to oppose authorizing the billions of dollars that Obama has pledged to help developing nations adapt to climate change. In other words, to hand over to carbon billionaires like Al Gore and Bill Gates. Now, they say the current goal is $100 billion per year. Let me repeat that, $100 billion per year by 2020 to help them to get cheap energy sources, cheap and clean energy sources. And today we saw this plan that Bill Gates is coming out. Again, this was actually yesterday he unveiled plans by an international coalition to invest billions of dollars in clean energy. 20 countries are involved in this. The United States is one of those. And the countries have pledged to double their investment in low or no carbon energy research. They said during the summer, Bill Gates said that he would invest about $1 billion over the next 5 years. This is not altruism, folks. This is buying his way into the controlling mechanism of this. Well, what could possibly go wrong? Well, we're going to talk about what has gone wrong. But what could go wrong with this agreement? They're pointing out that India and Russia may be ready to throw a monkey wrench into the machinery of this global consensus, because that's what they really want. They want a consensus. This is an article from WND. It's Patrick Wood, an economist and an author they talked to. He says, we've already seen India calling the U.S. a carbon imperialist. We're one of the carbon bigots of the world. How dare we? Obama tried to tell India how to run its affairs. And of course, they're absolutely right. That is what's going on. But see, Obama is doing it to us as well. It's not the United States is a carbon imperialist. It's that this small group of elite capitalists and their hand-picked puppets in places like high places like Obama, they are the ones who are the carbon imperialists. And what's the deal about imperialism? Of course, India knows about imperialism. That's when you presumably have your own government. You know, all the way through the bureaucracy of India was all populated with people that were native, all except at the very top. At the very top, they had a few British people controlling it. But all the rest of the way down, this massive bureaucracy that the British created when they controlled India, all the rest of it was populated with Indians to make it appear as if it was a local government. But it wasn't. It was an imperial government. When you got a few people at the top dictating to other people what they're going to be able to do, their standard of living that they're going to be able to have, forcing austerity on them so they can get even richer, that is imperialism. And that's being done not only to India, but it's going to be done to the United States, even though we are the ones pushing the hardest for it, because we are the ones who've been taken over the most by the crony capitalists. Russia is also pushing back on this. They say Russia has also said it will not abide by the carbon cuts designed to limit global warming to, and again, this 2 degrees centigrade increase that they're talking about. Again, that comes from Schellenhuber, the guy at the epicenter of all of this stuff, talking about this 2 degrees that we can't move one way or the other. They have absolutely no basis for any of their models. When they have predicted how we would see the temperature go up if we saw carbon dioxide emissions go up, carbon dioxide emissions did go up, in fact. Temperatures did not go up. They play games with where they collect it, you know, as well as I do. If you look at the thermometer in your car, we lived outside of the city back in North Carolina. We would see from the small city of Raleigh to where we lived, about 30 miles out, we would see a differential typically of 3 to 5 degrees in terms of it being cooler, because where we lived, it was a massive forest that we lived in. I even see it here in Austin. I see a difference in temperature. I live in the exurbs of Austin, and it's not a heavily forested area. But I still see, after I get out of the heat desert of the cities, I see that. So they're very careful about where they put their thermostats. Put them on airport tarmacs. They put them in the middle of cities. If you adjust, where you put your temperature can give you those kinds of differences. Of course, we also see that NASA is talking about contradictory information. Sometimes they'll come out and say the polar ice caps are melting, but you know, we had in February, they said the polar ice caps are bigger than they've been. We've seen 6 years of growth. We just had another report talking about how they were at record depth, even though they had a larger amount of snow melting on one side of Antarctica. The snow accumulation, not the snow accumulation, but the ice accumulation was much greater in the other parts of Antarctica. The environmentalists then came back and said, oh, you're talking about snow accumulation. I said, no, there hasn't been any snow. It's actually increasing ice. So we get this back and forth. Even NASA can't decide, because in between those two reports talking about how much it had grown in 6 years and then talking about the record net increase that they've had, there was one saying, oh, it's shrinking, all coming from the same government agency. So the science is not settled. The models do not predict what they said they were going to do. As a matter of fact, the models, for the most part, are untestable. They're talking and theorizing about things that are going to happen 50 years, 100 years, 1,000 years in the future. There is no way to do this, so they appeal to their raw basis of authority. But going on with what's happening with the crony capitalism, they say in the case of Obama, we already know what he's going to do. He's already laid it out. He's looking to use the Clean Air Act. He's going to rewrite it. He's going to implement it. He's going to implement these policies using the EPA, using the Clean Air Act, using his executive authority. So we know it's going to be rammed down our throats, but they need a consensus, and they need to come up with something and how they're going to transfer this to other people. And that's where the crony climatism comes in. And I want you to remember, most people remember Celente. That was talked about a lot. That happened a few years ago. But the night before this climate change summit came up, Obama had been pouring money into a company from Spain called Abnegoa S.A., and I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly. We need to look that up, because we need to make that a household word. But it's a Spanish company. Abnegoa S.A. received $3 billion in administration sustainable energy loans and money from the Export-Import Bank in the form of loan guarantees. So they announced that they'd started bankruptcy proceedings the night or the day before this conference began. And this is a huge amount that is going to be involved in this. What they were going to do, they were going to build 4 power plants in California and Arizona that were solar power plants. And they are now going to renege on some of that, I assume. Some of that has gone online. The plants that are online are only putting out half of what they said they were going to do. Sounds very much like things that we've seen before with these other green companies that Obama has been funding. If we go back and look at April, we saw that the Obama clean energy loans were leaving taxpayers $2.2 billion in the hole. That was a Washington Times report back in April. Now, that was $2.2 billion in April collectively, okay? And they were saying that, well, some people have put it at $4 billion, but then they're playing games with it and getting it down to $2 billion. Whatever. We've now seen another $3 billion just with a single company that is going bankrupt, this Spanish company. So it's growing that quickly. There was a list back in 2012, 3 years ago. There had been 36 taxpayer-funded green energy failures. And, of course, one of those was Celente. That was a $500 million. And everybody was talking about Celente as a great example of this kind of crony capitalism. And these figures, again, do not include any state, local, or federal tax credit subsidies. This is just some of the other federal loan guarantees that were part of this. So that was back in 2012. There have been 36 green energy failures at that point in time. And they just keep failing. Nevertheless, we see this report that green energy sees a secure future from Obama's climate plan. So in spite of 36 countries failing 3 years ago, and even more now, in spite of one that's $3 billion failing the day before the climate summit, we now see that nothing is going to change, of course. Obama is going to stick the course. He is going to continue to subsidize these people. They talk about how solar and wind energy in the United States is likely to have a secure future thanks to President Barack Obama's plan to cut carbon emissions by forcing utilities to use renewable resources. So their hands are tied. They've legislated and said, you're going to produce X amount of electricity from renewable resources, and so then it really doesn't matter how much it costs. You're going to have to raise your utility rates. You're going to have to fund these companies that continue to go belly up because they're mandating that you do that and then mandating that they're going to subsidize it. So that's the greenwashing that's going on with this. If you really believe that there's man-made global warming, you have to understand that it is really about transferring the money. We've got two options that are coming up in this climate agreement that they're trying to hammer out. We've already seen the draft agreement, and we know that there's two options. One of those options is essentially a voluntary option where people are they're going to promote compliance, but they're not going to enforce compliance. Now, Obama has said, and the Obama White House has made no secret in the past of talking about how they needed to make this agreement legally binding, how they needed to have an enforcement mechanism. Now Obama is saying the same thing himself, saying it personally. So they're escalating this to a level that they've never done before. And I want to tell you, and I've talked about this on the nightly news, out of these two options, one of them, which is promoting it, doing it voluntarily, that doesn't get nearly the kind of detail as option two, which is an international tribunal of climate justice. It addresses cases of noncompliance of all commitments by the developing countries, and it produces a list of consequences. Who's going to enforce these consequences? If you're going to have an international group that is going to be above the sovereignty of these individual nations, that is going to enforce compliance, you are talking about a world government. And as I pointed out before, when you look at option one, which is this kind of, well, let's just kind of promote it, they don't have the details down. They don't know how many delegates they're going to have with this. But when you look at option two, the hammer mechanism, they know precisely that they're going to have 12 members. Half of them are going to be from developing countries. Half of them are going to be from non-developing countries. Stay with us when we come back. We're going to go to your calls. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight, your host. I want to go back to our callers. Before I do, real quickly, I just want to let you know about specials that we have at the InfoWarsLife.com and the InfoWarsStore.com. We have the new product that Alex has been talking about, the Premium Power Pack. Others charge $150 for power packs that have lesser specifications. This will not only charge your electronic devices, but it will even be able to jumpstart your car with the included jumper cables. That's available for $120. We have free shipping available at the store. We have a free ebook, Keys to Survival. All you have to do is sign up to the newsletter to get that free ebook. And we have a 25% off special on Super Male, Super Female Vitality that ends tonight at midnight. And again, free shipping on everything at the store. I want to go back to our callers in just a moment. Before I do, I was just handed an article by Matt here in production talking about what needs to be ironed out in this agreement. And, of course, many of the people like the Atlantic who believe that there really is a man-made global warming problem that needs to be solved are looking at this and saying, you know, there's a possibility that they won't even reach a global temperature target, that they won't even set that target. And it's like, well, you know what? That's a real possibility. And I hope it is, because I don't think a few politicians should be sitting around and setting the global thermostat. Who are they to determine whether the temperature needs to be hotter or warmer? Of course, we know that they have the capability to do that, and not by controlling emissions. We know that they have the geoengineering capability to do that. We know they've been messing around with geoengineering for quite a while. You can take a look at the Skyder Alert app. That's where people will phone in places where there is a cloud covering because of chemtrails that they're spraying in that area. And you can see in those areas, they correlated that to a rise in the temperatures over those areas. Again, you can make it look as if the climate is doing something, or you can actually manipulate the climate. When they have the geoengineering conference that they had in August of 2014, there were several papers saying, this is crazy, all this talk about setting a thermostat globally. Who are we to do that? We don't have the wisdom to do that, even though we do have the mechanism to do that. And they always talk about it as if it's not something that they're doing. We've been covering that for quite a long time. But it is just I think people on the left who even understand, who believe, I should say, that this is something that needs to be done, even they understand that this is really going to be nothing but greenwashing. Hopefully they won't come up with some kind of an enforcement mechanism that's global. Hopefully they will just come up with some good commitments that they have to each other, make each other feel good about it. But I'll tell you one thing that is going to happen, because it is already happening. They're going to be pouring massive amounts of money. All they really want to do is get the okay from their governments to transfer money to these greenwashing tech giants, as we see Bill Gates getting his finger in the pie. Let's go real quickly to Chad in South Carolina. You wanted to talk about ISIS, defunding ISIS. Go ahead.
Hey, Mr. Knight. Yeah, I haven't heard that term, to defund ISIS. Have you heard it?
I haven't heard them say that they want to do that. No. When we really know that they are funding ISIS, aren't they?
Yes, like I heard defund Planned Parenthood, but I haven't heard anyone say we need to defund ISIS. And also it sounds like this is Celente 2.0, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
And did Celente get bailed out? Whenever everyone invested in Celente and the masses, the people, us, we lose our money.
That's right.
When we invest, and then they get their bonuses. They still make their money, but yet, see, anytime we get smart, and we say, well, we'll invest in the military-industrial complex or the pharmaceutical industry, then they go belly up, and then they get bailed out. So it's no beating them. It's just expose, right?
And, of course, this is going to be Celente 2.0, the Spanish company that went belly up just before the climate conference began. That is 6 times bigger than Celente, and it just underscores the crimes that are really going on here. That's all the time we've got. Sorry to the rest of the callers. Join us tonight for the InfoWars Nightly News at 7 Central, 8 p.m. Eastern.